Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the October meeting for the School Bus Safety Committee / Special Ed Committee, who will meet directly after this. Good morning to everybody on the camera. I hope people are tuning in to us this morning. I know we're coming from beautiful Brainerd today. Fantastic, beautiful Brainerd. Thank you, Kayla, for hosting. Do you have any announcements or comments before we get going?
No, thank you everyone for joining us. There's coffee and cookies over there, so help yourself. And then down the hallway, about midway is the men's restroom, and then just about at the end of the hallway on your right is the women's restroom. But thank you for joining us.
I'm glad you didn't have any comments. Thank you.
Just housekeeping.
Okay, so we'll dig right into it, and thanks for Kevin for being our interim secretary. So we'll start off with the secretary's report, and that was available to you at the front table for those of us who are here.
And I emailed it out to everybody, and a lot of people did not get it. I went by the email list I was given. So if you need your email added to the list, write it on the sign-in sheet today so I can make sure it's right. And then anybody online watching, if you did not get it and you want to email me, you can email me at STORMER at bloomington.k12.us. Amen. That's right. Amen.
You want to say that one more time?
KStormer at bloomington.k12.mn.us. Is there any corrections to the secretary's report from last month's meeting or additions? If not, I make a motion to accept the minutes. Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Thank you.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
All right,
Moving on.
moving on, and we're going to our department reports. Kelly, I don't believe is here today, and I don't think I've heard anything from Kelly as far as anything new from her. In case folks haven't heard, Kelly was promoted or reassigned, but she's still representing transportation at this time. But she will be moving on to the student accounting department, which is under the same director. So she will be assisting whoever takes over her role in the transition. But she is still our contact at the Department of Education right now. But just so you know, we'll be losing her at some time in the near future. Department of Public Safety, Jim is here to represent you guys. So you have 45 minutes.
You won't need 45 minutes. I'm not Davis. Did you hear that, Paul? I've got some notes here that Brian passed along. Brian and his wife are expecting their second child soon, and he decided he didn't want to be as far from home. So he says that School Bus Safety Week is coming up, October 20th to the 24th, and the State Patrol in conjunction with PBS will be doing a press release on school bus stop arm violations. We recently caught another gross misdemeanor violation on camera up on Highway 2 near the Saginaw scale, which would be like west of Highway 55, Duluth, Cloquet area. It was on the camera, and it's a semi passing the bus with the students on the ground on the semi side. And in fact, this video actually even has the semi sliding over, crossing the fog line, getting even closer to the students. And that driver's been charged with the gross misdemeanor violation. I recently had one in my area where the bus is stopped, is passed from the rear by a car. And as the car goes by the student, who is also to the left of the violator vehicle, probably within 4 or 5 feet, the student ID'd the driver. And when he goes walking up the steps of the bus, he tells the bus driver, who's asking if he's all right. He says, yeah, I'm okay. And by the way, he said that driver of the car was Mrs. Gustafson. She works at the school. So I got to do all of my investigation at the school, talking with the student, with the driver, and with the violator. So that was kind of nice. We've had 2 cases of drivers testing positive just recently, probably within the last 5 weeks. One was a random draw, and after finishing up the route, the driver was tested and was over, I believe it was just over 0.035. That's my case. That's going to the county attorney's office. And then we had another one just recently at a carrier near the metro, where a school liaison officer detected alcohol on the driver. They PBT the driver. The driver was a 0.06 something, and for some reason was never arrested for DWI in a commercial vehicle. The school got involved, the company got involved, and they basically just turned the driver loose. The company fired him. Even after this, the company did not do any of their own reasonable suspicion testing, which if Paul were here, he'd be talking a lot about that. For some reason, they dropped the ball there. They should have gone through after law enforcement detected that and then the road tested. So not only did law enforcement in this case drop the ball, the carrier did also. So now you've got a driver out there that's gonna, that really hasn't come back as a positive test for DOT purposes. That we can still use the law enforcement test. They got to charge this driver with a gross misdemeanor or actually zero tolerance violation. So, and I don't know if anybody saw the news.
So he will be charged?
The driver will be charged.
Okay,
yes.
My question is now we have
charged with the gross misdemeanor, however, it should be charged with the DWI.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. And once it finally got to our office that this happened, it was the next day. Well, it's a little late. It was just a PBT test. There was no implied consent read, so we can't backtrack and charge the DWI out. We don't have any driving conduct, all kinds of things that fall into that. And I don't know if anybody saw the news yesterday or the day before. If you haven't, in your spare time, Google the Utah school bus driver, and it will probably be the first thing that comes up. It's been on the ABC News. Anybody seen that in the last day or so? It's a school bus driver who is on a field trip with parents and students on board, who has, I think, like 7 different prescription medications in her system. And parents are calling in, reporting her as being all over the road. Up against the guardrail, using both lanes on the freeway, things like that. Then they're trying to get law enforcement there to get him stopped. She eventually was stopped and has been charged. But all 3 of these are just kind of reminded that we need to have that face-to-face time with our drivers once in a while. And you need to have either your ears or someone else's ears listening to what's going on with your drivers. Mm-hmm. In the case of this Utah one, you've got a driver here who is on 7 different medications, a couple of those being antidepressant medications. I'm sure that someone else in the driver's pool is aware of this stuff. So eyes and ears on our drivers is kind of the word that we want to get out there. What else, Brian, have? From Dwayne, there's actually true, Brian. There's been a variance was issued for midship camera mounting to accommodate Scion's design. So they're now going to allow that midship camera mount to extend up to 4 inches, is what my notes here say. Don't ask a whole lot of questions about this. They still need to be mounted directly over a seat back, have no sharp edges, and be within 24 inches of the top of the side window. So I guess any questions, get a hold of Dwayne.
Yeah, The current one is, I think, 2 inches or 3 inches, so he's just letting it be a little bit bigger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all I got.
On the positive alcohol test, you guys said it was after the route. Was it a random or reasonable suspicion?
The one that I'm dealing with in northern Minnesota was a random after, it was after the morning route. The one that happened, the carry on by the cities that the school liaison officer caught was also after the route.
So the randoms, we've been told that random, we have to do it right when they come in. We were told by the feds.
Yes.
So why wasn't he, if it was a random, why wasn't he tested before he went on his route?
Before he went on the route?
Yeah.
I think the testing facility, it's a mobile tester, and they showed up.
Right, during the morning routes.
Yes, during the morning routes, and were there when the drivers came off of
Yes.
morning route.
Okay. Because we've been told that we can't even put them on a route with the weight. You know, but we have our own evidentiary quality machines, we test.
Oh, see
ourselves.
then that's a whole different, you're ready to test them right away, right, when they show up?
Yeah.
Then yes, you would go.
So most places have mobile people coming out and testing.
Some have mobile, some are still using the local clinic, the local hospital, the local, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We did have a little squabble between the one I'm dealing with, the random, is also a private carrier situation, and there was kind of a little bit of a disagreement between who can use that test. Okay, it wasn't taken by law enforcement; it was taken by the mobile tester. After discussion with Charles St. Martin and his office, we were able to come up with statutes that stated, federal regs that stated that we had the right to that test and to the certification of their testing equipment, so that we can use that, or that I could use that to base the formal charges for the county attorney's office. So if anybody runs across that, you need that information.
And Charles St. Martin is?
He's right under Drexler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Federal motor carrier.
We want to do we didn't do it.
We didn't do an introduction, so let's finish this. Did anybody else have any questions? I know, halfway through, we hadn't done that yet. Any other questions? No? Okay, let's take a second and quickly run around and introduce ourselves. I know the room is huge, so. First off, myself, I'm John Thomas. I'm with Eastern Carver County Schools in Chaska.
Where's that?
Yeah.
Kevin Stormer, Bloomington Schools.
Steve Crenshaw, Minneapolis Public Schools.
And Harry Balcom, Minneapolis Public Schools also.
Either way, folks.
Stephanie Raskin, Bloomington Schools.
Marcia Simonson, Bloomington Schools.
Bob Capitol, Bloomington Schools.
Bill Martin, Eden Prairie Schools.
Jamie Rumford, Clean Transportation.
Derek Gate, Hopkins Public Schools.
Kayla Hankins, Sipkin, Brainerd Schools.
Thomas Berlin, Hopkins Public Schools.
Bill Carlson, Meetings.
Jim Sennenfelder, State Patrol.
Well, Bloomington is well represented.
Yes, very well, very well.
We have the day off today.
Must be nice.
Yeah, we have to do
Okay. Yeah.
The TDS, we continue to have a backlog with issuing licenses. It's unfortunately, a common event. It seems to happen every August, September. Just with the volume of tests that we do during the summer and the applications that come in. So they're working on trying to get that backlog down. Because ideally, we want the turnaround. Our goal internally is 14 days. So they're working on that. Med-certs, we're pretty current with that. We're entering med-certs that were received by a fax from October 7th. So we're within the 10-day window that we're required to be with the federal government. There's been some word out there in other states in the country where they're seeing a lot of fraudulent medical certificates. 5 states in particular, they're cropping up all over. Either they're from drivers that, they don't pass the medical exam, so they just go shopping till they find someone that'll issue them a medical certificate. In a lot of these cases, in particular, the one in New Mexico, they estimated that there were about 3,000 drivers that might be affected by this. And they're, of course, they're not just in New Mexico, they're in other states. So fortunately, at this point, I don't believe any Minnesota drivers have obtained the med cert from this individual. And what's really interesting is this particular individual is no longer licensed to practice medicine even. So it gets even more interesting. So we're kind of on a little bit of alert and looking at those med certs that come in. Listened to a webinar yesterday, and they're talking about finalizing the rule for electronic submission of the medical certificate by the end of this year, which would be really good news. Of course, whenever they finalize the rule at the federal level, they give states a couple of years to get in compliance with it. Well, hopefully we'll be ready to go as soon as we can get the proper programming to hook up to the federal registry. What I'm talking about here is that we will no longer be dealing with the med certs coming in from the driver at the state agency or at the offices. What would happen is that when the medical exam is done, which is what the medical examiners are doing now, is they send their results to the federal registry. The next piece of that will be, then it will be transmitted from the federal registry to the state driver's license of that driver overnight. So it will go right on to the driver's record, which will really make things more real time. It takes that whole paper piece out of it, and this is fraud because it's coming, there's nothing, no piece in between unless the medical examiner is committing fraud. So we're kind of excited for that to be finalized because it will just speed up the whole med cert process, and it'll take us out of this picture of, if anybody's ever seen the pictures of paper that have come in from the field, and that we have to scan that to the record, and it will just simplify everything for us. So really looking forward to that. I know there's been some confusion with some of the certified medical examiners also. They've been telling drivers that they'll take care of getting the med cert into the state, and that's not accurate. So there's been a lot of confusion with that nationally, actually. And so I'm aware that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration did send a message out to all the certified medical examiners trying to clarify that, to remind drivers that it's still their responsibility to submit that med cert to their state licensing agency. So, as far as the CDL manual, that's been updated and it's on the DBS website. There's also an audio format of that now on the website also. It's broken down by the chapters. So if you have folks that maybe struggle with reading, that's a huge document to read. So it is in that audio format now. And all you have to do is go on the website and click on it, and they should be able to, as long as their computer's set up for being able to hear the audio, they can access it that way. We plan on sending representatives to the MAPT fall conferences tomorrow. I know I'll have representatives up in Erskine and Hopkins and Albany, I believe. So, and we're busy training. Kathy actually is working with third-party testers this week. We finished training 14, well, not finished training, and we started training 14 new clerical staff last week, which will help in the future here. Another topic I want to bring up, I don't know where it fits in this, but just some feedback that we've gotten on some of the driver testing for school bus lately is we have incidents where that child protection alarm goes off and the driver taking the test doesn't know how to disarm it. And so it's kind of, how do you continue with the test with that going on? You really can't. So we're kind of looking for some feedback on that, because we're looking at how are we gonna handle that as it happens during the test? Is it, you call it, is it the driver error? I think it is the driver. Well, then does that make it an automatic fail? Because you can't continue with the test if they can't disarm it. Sometimes there's a trainer that came out with them that can assist and shut it off. But then again, now if that happens, does that mean they're helping the driver during the test, which we don't allow that either? So I don't know if it's something, just looking for feedback. Are we getting enough training on folks to handle that? I'm just kind of throwing it out there. I don't know if you folks train on that, if you have those on your buses.
We have new trainees. We actually have our mechanics run through all the systems and how to disarm.
I know I've had to disarm like alarms at the exam station when I was an examiner years ago. When that thing's going off, you can't remember your name. I understand. Let alone what's the password to disarm the thing. So I know when that thing goes off, it's kind of, you're already nervous anyways, but it's just kind of some feedback that maybe if you have those, make sure that your drivers are getting properly trained on how to disarm it, because if it happens during the road test, it kind of mucks up everything, so. Guess that's all I got.
Okay.
Unless there's any questions.
How has it been so far? Have you continued with the eval once the alarm goes off, or?
In the one case, there was a trainer there that could assist whoever brought that test out, that person out for the test, so they disarmed it then. I think there was one case where they couldn't disarm it, so we did end up ending the test. So we're kind of in this limbo land of how we should go forward and handle this. And I think the best way to handle it is make sure that it's being trained so that we don't have the situation even occur.
You would think that if they've gone through their full training,
They should know how to do it.
Yeah.
Do it, yeah.
Yeah, sounds like they trained them plus other than they tested it.
That could happen too.
happen
You know.
too, yeah,
that
because each
could
one's a
happen.
little different.
And you've got a number of, you guys probably have them too, you've got a number of places that all their buses aren't equipped with that.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, because our older ones don't have it.
Yeah.
The newer ones do, but some, you lift the handle up, others, you push the
Push the
button.
button.
I mean, you have to do both.
So just kind of an item to throw out there
Yeah.
that maybe to consider beefing that up in your training.
I also noticed that those buses that do have the instructions on how to turn it off are not easily located and you can read it. You would think you'd have a nice big sign there that says this is how to turn it off. Little tiny thing in the corner right next to the warranty book.
So Deb, are you getting any feedback from districts or contractors about drivers that are not able to pass their physicals?
It's not so much from the school bus industry, it's more in the trucking industry, to tell you the truth. I think the school bus industry, you've dealt with that for years with the physical, of course, so has the trucking industry, but they're having more issues where the drivers don't understand that they need to give it to the state, kind of going back to the point I made earlier, where they go to the medical examiner, oh, we'll take care of it for you, well, then they're not. And these drivers are finding out they're getting downgraded. And that's been more of an issue. I haven't heard anything directly from anybody. That's not the complaints I get. I get lots of others. But
I just had mine recently, and I see quite a difference in my physical this time from one I had before that.
yeah, a lot of those comments that the medical exam appears to be more thorough now perhaps than some of the folks that did them in the past.
Yep.
And that's all part of the certified medical examiner program. So.
Yeah, it was kind of actually, it was there, it was like worried.
Did you turn on the bright light and say, do you have problems sleeping? That's how mine was.
I do have one more announcement. We did select a new assistant regional supervisor in Region 6. It's Brett Thomas, and he works out of the Wilmer exam station.
Brian's apparently listening, so.
Hi,
everybody-
Brian.
That was his
Hi,
question.
Brian.
Hey, Brian.
That's where that question came from.
Oh, okay. Give us updates on the baby, Brett. Just let us know if it's coming.
You know, one of the other topic that I wanted to ask about, you know, drivers, when you talk about drivers shopping around for examiners, you know, drivers will get released from one place, district, and they go around to other districts, and you know, districts are not asking for the release of the drug testing and checking and requesting it from the district that they leave. And I think we're doing our industry a disservice if we don't follow through with that, because we need to weed out those type of drivers. That's my comment.
That's it.
I have nothing else to add.
Yeah.
Just that we need to follow.
And it is a rule that you can send the driver to a physician of your choosing. That's in the rule. So if you have that situation where you've got somebody shopping around, you know, or you have a situation with a driver that you think he needs to be or she needs to be reaching, life-changing situation, you can send them to a physician of your choosing.
Okay.
We try to get around it by we pay for the physical. So they go to our doctor, we pay for it.
Mm-hmm. If you have an applicant that comes in, do you automatically make them go get a physical, or?
They have to get a pre-employment.
Okay.
So same, it's not a school bus, but it's still pre-employment physical.
Pretty close. Okay. All right, any other questions for Deb? Anything online? No? Okay, awesome. Let's see here. Committee reports, trainer, Derek?
Notice your name is spelled right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You know, Train the Trainer will be in July, you know, 6th to the 10th. And, you know, again, just encouraging, you know, being, it's the silver anniversary, 25th anniversary of Train the Trainer. You know, we're putting on the bus crash, encouraging everyone to attend, and we will be sending out information to superintendent, business managers, you know, asking, because there will be a lot of people that will benefit from Training the Trainer this year with some of the breakout sessions that we'll be doing. So more information to come, and just stay tuned.
Can you give a little bit, I know the planning hasn't finished yet, but I was recently asked about mock bus crash and what are people going to get out of that itself? So can you give an idea of what your view is?
Yeah. You know, we're going to reenact the Cottonwood bus crash that took place, and what happened at the scene, and how the DPS do their investigation, check things out. How do you get kids out of the buses or the bus? What each of the different role of, you know, fire, police, you know, plays in those crashes, and where does transportation fall into that? What should you be doing as a transportation department manager, you know, during the crash, post crash? And really, there are a lot of things like triaging when the medical EMT is there and they're triaging, you know, kids. What does that mean? Most people don't know the red, yellow, green markings, and do they tag them? And so just learning from that how a accident scene, and being that it's a real situation that happened, and most everything is out in the public right now, and we have so much information from our state troopers to do that. So we feel that we'll get a very good reenactment of that. Really, we'll be getting a bus that will be tipped over and a helicopter coming in, and just to get the feel of what happens at an accident scene.
Okay. So the attendees, 200 or so attendees will be involved, or they'll be on the side?
We'll have stands set up for the attendees to be watching at Grand City Casino Hinckley. There's a place dedicated for that, and there's a staging area for the helicopter. And, hopefully we'll have one fly in, but they can't always land at the scene, so they have to land where it's safe. And then, come on over. We'll have the fire trucks coming in, and so the participants, the attendees, will be watching this, and it will be narrated by someone to let them know what is going on at different times at different places.
And then the sessions that will happen after that, the goal at this point will be that the different agencies will come in and explain what part they played. Because I think in the event of a crash, once law enforcement gets there, the emergency agencies get there, that's their scene and that's a crime scene, and there's things that we can and can't do. And I think the goal will also be that the former superintendent will be joining us as well, and a principal or teacher, so they'll kind of walk us through or be able to explain to us what happened on there.
And some of the parents of the victims will be there, all hopefully, if they could speak.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it is that if you're on, I'm very active in our district's crisis. I'm on our crisis team. I'm on our building crisis team, and it makes you start to think about when you look at that, at your crisis plan, what's good, what's bad. Granted, you can't plan for everything, and we found that when we had that storm come through the third day of school. Lost all power and water, and you can't plan for everything, but I think it'll make people start to think about what's important. I know I'm going to bring our health and safety person that works in our crisis plan. I want her to come so that she can kind of get a feel for it.
We're hoping what transportation departments and school districts will take away from this is if they don't have an emergency plan for handling situations, at least begin to put something together. Because it really can happen to anybody. The better prepared you are for it, the less likely you're going to make mistakes, when that happens. So our goal is just to prepare, make everyone aware that, you really need an emergency, plan, whether it be for evacuation, whether it be fire, whether it be lockdown, and most school districts need to include transportation. We are the only ones that could actually move large amounts of people from each site, and that becomes important and critical.
I'm just curious, for those people that are in the room, how many of you are on your district crisis team? Okay. I just think it's a huge role for transportation. The third day of school, we had this huge storm that came through. It started raining at 10 to 7. By 7 o'clock, I was getting the phone calls and hearing on the radio that we had buses that couldn't get down the roadway because trees were down, blocking them. And by 10 after 7, I think it was, we had lost all power in both the city of Brainerd and the city of Baxter. So we had no computers, we had no light, we had a water main or something broke at the same time, so there was no running water. By 7:30, quarter to 8, our team was assembled. We had to figure out, what are we going to do? Are the kids safer staying in school, because we just about have them all here, or do we turn around and take them home, and now maybe we can't get back down roads? And we had to bring charter buses in that we could use for restroom facilities until we could get the satellites at all of the schools. So, transportation, I played a huge part in that whole process.
So what was your plan? What kind of things did you, besides porta potties and charter buses, did you keep the students?
We kept the students in the building because we were able to, even though one of our buildings had no power until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They did, and there was a light coming in that the kids classes went on as normal. Teachers used the paper and pencil to take attendance. That building that had no running water or electricity, they put together a team at our high school, and that team made sack lunches for, I think it was 2,000 kids. By 11 o'clock, or 10:45, those sandwiches were there. By 11:30, all of the kids were fed. We had some parents that were upset about it, but after we told them, this was maybe the safest place for some of these kids, because there was quite a bit of our county that didn't have power. So we could have been, again, taking kids home. We couldn't have gotten to their home. They would have had no power. So we were able to still hold our classes, feed the kids. Things went really, really well.
Okay.
So it turned out to be a good call to keep the kids in school. And then I got a call from the county, it's probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that said all the trees that were blocking roadways have been moved. The buses should have no problems getting through. So we were able to get all of our kids back home without any issues.
So did you guys do a, wrap up a couple days later to say what went well?
Yep.
What kind of things is the school district looking at to prepare for the next time?
Well, and that was the thing that we talked about, was that you can, we could plan all we want, but until the event happens, I mean, who would have thought that would have happened third day of school?
Right.
The one thing that we did learn is that we need to be more defined in who's our commander and who's under the commander and what role is each person going to play. The porta potties is a prime example. We said, this is what we need. We told our health and safety person, order these for all of the buildings. She called one of the buildings and the building told her, no, so-and-so said they were going to order the porta potties for us. So she called back and canceled them. Well, then every hour and a half, 2 hours, we met throughout the day. And it was probably about 10 o'clock, we got back together and the question came up about when the porta potties were getting to this building. And she said, well, I was told that you were ordering them. So it's that chain of command and making sure that that we had that chain of command, and it was very clear. The other thing was making sure that any messages that went out to the public, to our families, our building staff, that it was a consistent message. So we had communication, or somebody typed up what we wanted the secretaries to say, what we wanted our staff to say, so we were consistent in that.
Could you get somebody from like the county to come into your whole group and do like an incident command system class? So you guys can define who's in charge of what.
We have,
For emergency management.
yeah, we have that. Part of the thing that we ran through is that we had a new superintendent, brand new superintendent, brand new director of schools, and brand new curriculum director. So we had 3 people on our team that just came to us July 1. Wow. So they weren't even familiar. They relied on us.
So they weren't the commander.
They did a really, really nice job, but it was more of them knowing, who do we contact here? And our buildings and grounds guy did an amazing job keeping in contact with the county and city officials. And then what happened was the water level dropped so low in the city of Brainerd that they had to do, it became an automatic bacterial test that they had to do, and then there was bacteria or something found in the water. So we were on boil for 3 or 4 days. So now we got to get water shipped into all of our buildings. And then you think about, we can't cook with that water. What are we gonna do? The kids can't use the drinking fountains. All the drinking fountains had to be taped up, so bottled water had to be shipped in. Our coffee, we had to use, bottled water. So we learned a lot.
Coffee.
Yeah. We were in a panic. What are we going to do about coffee?
So is there only one main water main coming into the town?
It's a couple wells, isn't it?
Yeah, but what happened was ironic, and what was weird is our big water tower, our main water tower in Brainerd, was down for maintenance. It was down in the end of August, and they're still working on it. It takes a couple of months, cleaning it out, repainting it, and everything that they have to do. So we've got another water tower. That one's not quite as big. And what ended up happening, and it was just a coincidence, that some water pipe broke, and all the water was we lost all the water.
Oh,
So it was just kind of a chain of events, and those two weren't connected. Snowball, yeah. So yeah, it was really interesting for us that day, and then the aftermath of it was a challenge.
But winter to look forward to now.
Yes, now we have winter to look forward to.
So is it more like straight line winds or something as far as all these trees?
Well, that's what they said, straight line winds, but I think there's still a question if there wasn't a little twister that went through. So it was fun.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Kayla, going back to train the trainer.
Yes.
Will the flyers be ready as usual in like the 1st of January? Are you guys putting a booth in?
We were gonna hang out with you guys.
Oh, okay. Hey, whatever.
We're gonna talk about it at the board meeting this afternoon. That is our goal.
You're doing a booth.
Yes.
Yep, we are doing a booth, and it'll be, everything will be ready by January, and that's the plan.
Yeah, Jim, I did try to wiggle my way into your guys' booth, and I have a 2x2 area.
That's all they give.
It's just like we do. If you see somebody walking down the hallway that you want to talk to, you just go out there and grab it.
We start walking with.
I'm gonna talk to that person.
Yeah.
We're the open booth. We're just gonna walk with people down that. Okay, thank you, Kayla, for telling us about that. That was fascinating. Excellent. School bus rodeo, neither Mike or Josh are here, but I don't think we have any changes or updates on that.
I have a comment on it.
Oh, God. Go ahead. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Maybe I should make a comment on it. I don't know.
Let me just make a note. If anybody's allergic to bees,
Kayla's got her fly swatter out here.
Kayla has a fly swatter, and Rainer has a water pump, but they obviously don't have a lot.
Right.
Okay.
No, there shouldn't be any problem with hosting the school bus rodeo in May. Just a heads up though, we've been contacted Ramsey County and the DOT and everything. They're working on a project where they're gonna put a road in that will abut the exam station there, 5W. They're planning on starting that project in the spring, but they're guaranteeing us that we'll still have access, obviously, to be open for business. So there will be maybe a little bit of maneuvering to get in there, so to speak. They're telling us that they're gonna continue to let us have access with the road we currently have into the exam station, but just want to give a heads up that there will be a project going on. They're gonna redo the intersection of County Road I, right off the side of the exam station there. They're gonna make that a roundabout. And part of it is to put this road in because they're developing the arsenal land there, just south of the exam station. So we should be able to go on as planned, but we may have a little bit of maneuvering to do depending on what's going on.
Okay. Did you poster contest? Cindy is not here. Have we heard anything?
Actually, we have it. We have the flyers. So I printed off some copies this morning. I know that, and Derek, jump in anytime, don't trip there. That we had record numbers of posters that came in this last year, so.
Yeah, and we did this thing again. Now, will this be sent to everybody by email and all that stuff? Okay.
Yes. And I know our newsletter hasn't gone out yet. I'm assuming that it will also be in our newsletter.
Anyone need extras? All right, so poster contest is out. Theme is bully free zone with a deadline of March 31st. And Cindy's email is on here if you have any questions. Thank you. Awesome. Stakeholders group will meet in December down in Randolph with the these two committees. So I don't think there's anything trying to do specific with that. And his notes to you, okay?
No.
So the organizational reports.
Just one other thing from Brian, see, it came out yesterday, wasn't, I'm just kind of looking through his email list here, and I think the majority of you are probably on this, but there's a link to a pregame video for the school bus poster again. So that should be in your email. If not, get a hold of Brian, he'll send it to you.
Okay, terrific. Terrific. MSBOA, there's no representation here. Do we have anything? Have we heard anything from them?
You know, the Winter Expo, the date. We have a date for Winter Expo. It's in January. Let's see. I'm in January 16th and 17th will be the Winter Expo, and we're having a planning meeting next Tuesday. Is that the 21st? To work out the details. If you have any topic ideas that you'd like us to discuss and try to find a speaker for, you go ahead and email them to me, and I'll bring it up. Send it to Kayla, and she'll forward it to me. Or you can send it to John, and John will forward it to me.
I'll send it to Kevin, and Kevin will lose his email.
So that's what I have for MSBOA.
Thank you. And
The national conference is coming up here in next month. Is anybody from here going to Kansas City? Okay. Derek is going to get a list of who's going to be going, and hopefully we can all meet when we're out there and spend a little time together. I'm going to NAPT, but I'm only going to the trade show. I'm actually attending NASDAQ this year. I know Brian's not going, and he suggested that maybe I attend NASDAQ this year, so that's what I'm going to be doing. Derek talked about the Winter Expo this afternoon, APT, their board meeting. Yeah, pretty quiet. Yeah.
I think we're starting to wind down here. Once again, we are still looking for a secretary. So if anybody online or
Don't be looking at me.
we would love to have you take that.
Job, but that's not one.
Somebody, Marcia, you'd be good.
Is there anything you folks want to talk about? Safety concerns, anything happening in your districts? Oh, I'm sorry. Who are you?
I'm down. North Bridge.
Yeah, thank you.
It was supposed to be an hour and a half. It's like 2. And oh my gosh. Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you may have to tell me how to get back, and
Oh.
I need to get back down to that area.
Okay.
Well, thanks for attending. Jeff.
Yes, you're welcome.
Anything going on in your district that's
No, nothing
You had a
in
good
our district.
school
It's
startup?
going good. Yeah, it's going
Okay.
really well.
good?
So,
Good, good.
Does anybody come up with a solution to the driver shortage?
At least not in my area.
You see a lot of you.
So-
I'm getting them. I can tell you that Josh and Tasha put the bus in the 4th of July parade with 5. Buses set alongside the road. You see
Signs
there's
everywhere.
billboards on them. You
I wonder if
know.
they'll come down and do filters.
Somebody, I saw one the other day. at signs.
Yeah, several contractors.
Yeah.
In cities are, what is it, $1,000 on some of them? Yeah.
I know our contractor has $100 referral. So if the driver refers somebody, there's $100 in there for them.
How are they speaking?
They're in need.
They're in the
Yeah, and I was reading think it was School Bus Fleet or STN magazine that just came out, and they were saying last year, there was a 14% shortage. This year, we're at a 28% shortage.
Wow.
And there's actually a shorter commercial drivers in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's time to relook at the unemployment in the summer.
Yeah.
Getting unemployment?
Yeah. We talked about that in the committee that Keith Paulson put together. I think we have to do it in a way because school bus drivers are tied with teachers, custodians, in that group as considered seasonal. So they have to try to work with a number of different, get the entire thing changed or somehow get to the legislature to allow school bus drivers to break away. And I don't know if he went any further than that meeting, but that's the first hurdle that we have is that I'll block that same piece. And if you sit there and say, well, school drivers would be eligible, then you might have other groups that would say, well, why are they not? But it was discussed at the meeting. I wish we could do that. I seriously wish we could do that. Because
The one thing about the drivers, I mean, teachers, but they get paid twice as much as the drivers.
yeah,
How's that?
Year round too.
And and they get paid year.
yeah. But they haven't set up that way.
They have a choice. They have a choice.
They have a choice. And there are some school bus,
Yes, there's some
school districts that allow
that.
to do that too, right? Yeah. I mean, I have the frustration, even with your side, but the demands that are put on the school bus drivers, or the demands that are put on the transportation system, especially with Mento and care and treatment and stuff, where all of a sudden they come down and say, oh, by the way, I have a kid that needs to go 45 miles away for a treatment start tomorrow, and they'll come back at 11:30 on Mondays and Wednesdays and 2:30 on Thursdays and Fridays or whatever. And it's like, what? Hey, I don't have this. we can't do that. That's part of my frustration is that they just can do anything. So, but no, there are no direct solutions. I'll talk to Keith because I don't know if he's going to try to redo that.
I just wanted to say, Jason Schoolmeister is our director, and he placed a bus this summer right in our town. We're a small town, and we received many applicants, and from there we've hired, I believe, 5. My own son decided to come with us.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it helped a lot.
So even though mom works for the transportation department, it took a bus in the parking lot for him to come in and apply.
No, he decided to change friends. So working down at Ronnie Mason's as a dealer. He needs some during the day, and he wanted to paint his cell and maybe go farther with tuitions and drive for maybe first or 2 trips. Because he'd like to work year round. Well, so when you were talking about that, a lot of opportunities, minimal summer school routes, so not all are employed, others time jobs.
Yeah.
So, and then you worry that they may not come back because it may turn into full time.
You're back to 5 days now.
We are,
Correct?
yeah,
Okay.
we
That
are.
was probably a big help. wasn't
It was, but then we lost MAPT kindergarten.
Mhm.
All of those trips to that no longer have it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that was 15 drivers of mine that lost half-day kindergarten.
yeah. But it could help. So, question?
John, did you have a question from Brian?
Is the baby here yet?
No, just tell Thomas to ask my question.
Thomas.
Oh,
He sent a thing, it says, if a bus aid is required for a special needs student who attends a private school, does the school district set that up at school?
If the private school is within the school district, the school district oversees that.
Well, there's a private school, you need to check with your special ed director, because private schools typically don't have IEPs. It depends on what the situation is, and there's a little bit more to it.
The private schools get the district that they reside in special ed department, they kind of represent both. And so if a aid is required on that, private schools, they do not provide special transportation. So if an aid is required, it's up to the district of resident to be involved in the IEP and pay for it.
So talk to the special ed director about
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Another meeting, you can ask your own.
Short timer over there.
I can call.
The clock is ticking for Jim.
I actually had
8 months.
a question that was sent to me. Why are it stops at intersections safer? This district has a family, I'm guessing that bus stop set up mid-block or at a driveway. And the district is saying they believe that it's safer to have a bus stop at an intersection. So this person is asking, you know, is there any documentation out there? Thoughts on it?
First of all, clarify the intersection, prior to or after, not at the intersection.
Right.
Okay,
Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm following.
Okay.
they can't go into the intersection.
Correct.
Right, so they have to be 30 feet from the corner.
Over time, there has been a lot of different discussions, both for both ways. Jan Vanderwall actually did a presentation probably 5 or 6 years at one of the MAPT conferences about how he believes in mid-street park bus stops because just to you know, the bus creates the traffic pattern. So when it's halfway down the street, like stop traffic, not trying to deal with stop signs, keeping it away from intersections. There are other areas where, or other arguments that intersections are safer or close to intersections are safer because there are traffic holes that could help the kids get to the bus stop as well as being at the bus stop. It's also safer for substitute drivers and things like that to have a better landmark to find. It's easier to find a street corner than a street house number at 6 o'clock in the morning. So there are very good discussions on both ways. There's some materials out there, and I usually keep it with me, but I haven't kept it. But there are actually some materials through the school bus services websites and stuff on how to design your bus stops.
American School Bus Council and
School
Safe Routes to Schools have information on designing safe bus stops.
Right.
Okay.
So there's not a clear-cut answer. It's more of a situation in your way. What is safer just by the environment? Is the intersection they want to be at uncontrolled? Is it 50 miles an hour? That kind of thing for mid-road. If mid-street, you obviously you deal with neighbors that may not want the bus stopping near their house. We deal with that a lot of times where all of a sudden kids are playing in somebody's yard or playing in somebody's garage. So it really comes down to individual basis, but there are arguments on both sides.
Well, in our district, we run into it a lot. In our district, we do corner stops, but a lot of the charter schools will stop in front of the parents' houses.
Right.
And so then when a kid switches from a charter school to a public school, they expect us to do the same thing. Well, the charter schools are low-density stops. Ours are high-density stops. Most of the time, the only reason they don't want to go to the corner is because they want to sit inside the house where their kid's warm and watch them walk out. So the terms mid-block or not, it's more convenience because a corner stop is not necessarily unsafe. It's just what the parent perceives as more safe for their kid. But if there's 10 kids, if we're going to stop in front of all these houses, that's 10 stops as opposed to 1 stop. So you also have to look at that when you're time of route, how many stops can you actually do on a route also?
And I could understand having a mid-block, block is a mile long.
Right.
That would make sense
kids
for,
coming
and
from
kids are coming,
all over.
you know, from all over. But if you're talking a standard neighborhood, you know, traffic is preparing to stop at a corner. And, you know, if a car is taking a turn and the bus is there and the stop arm is out, you know, they're going to stop there because they don't want to run through that stop arm. So it becomes a controlled intersection, just as if you had a mid-block stops. And most of the kids are supposed to be able to stop prior to the bus getting there. So they should be able to navigate themselves to the stop. And it's, you know, it's in statute that if a parent believes that their child cannot safely navigate themselves to a bus stop, then it's a parent responsibility to get them to the stop and monitor their behavior.
Now, you guys that get the phone calls, are you getting every year more and more phone calls from these parents out there that, you know, with what's on the news nowadays, that they want their kid picked up at their house?
Yeah.
We get hundreds of requests like that.
It's not gonna get worse, but we fall back
It's
on.
the same, it's been the same across the board. And so as soon as we give it to one,
Oh,
you
right.
know, how do you say no to somebody else and not, you know, because you have to have your integrity too, that you're treating everybody the same.
Right.
So if we give it to one, we only do house stops for special ed or if there's a medical. Otherwise, everybody's at a corner, and that's the way everybody's treated.
And we fall back on the same thing that Derek just said too, is that it's hard to say it, but it's the parent's responsibility to get their student to the bus stop. You know, it's not our responsibility to come get your student here.
Yeah, we tend not to say that because then it goes up the ladder.
In our district,
Go ahead.
in our district, we do the same thing, try to route the intersections, but we do have some situations where it is mid-block, but at larger apartment complexes. And unfortunately, we really don't have a good means to get the students to the intersection, but we do notice, I don't have hard numbers on this, but there are a higher occurrence of stop arm violations in those areas. We will also make exceptions. We have some weird intersections, divided highways, go into 2 lanes, you know, things like that. It's always come down to a safety issue for us. So it's not always hard and fast at the intersections, but it is kind of scary going to houses in mid-blocks with those stop arm violations.
Traffic's not expecting you.
Traffic is not expecting you.
Right.
Yeah, we have one ways that we're starting to have to do that is very scary. We've had quite a few incidences now.
Really?
Yeah, but that's, the people that to talk to are not here, so we'll talk about it later.
Okay. Can we set you up for one of these?
I've got a question, while we're talking about student stops. In Bloomington, we're required to use 8 ways for every stop unless the district picks a spot and designates that one that they're not using. But in other districts like Minneapolis, you use 4 ways for your stops.
We use a mixture.
You know, when they come in, when your drivers from out of Bloomington come into Bloomington, they use 4 ways for all of their student stops. And we're using 8 ways, so there's a confusion going on.
We don't have them cross, if we're using 4 ways, they're not crossing the street.
Okay, well, we don't usually see them using, district.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't think we get a lot of Minneapolis buses. It's
For student, but
Well,
not a different district.
right, and that Indiana transports around a lot too.
We don't see them.
It's confusing to drive.
Typically, I don't see them using any 8 ways. They're always using 4 ways.
Right.
Throughout the district.
If they're coming to Bloomington, it's a McKinney-Vento situation. And they're not crossing the street.
Okay. But still, what it's doing is causing a confusion in Bloomington.
Yeah.
Because
Especially for people.
the
who
drivers,
stop on.
they're going by people with yellow, using 8 ways to drop students, and they see that happening, and then they see them with the 8 ways. We have a lot of stop arm violations in a lot of areas because of that. It's just part of the problem. I just wondered if other districts coming to Bloomington should be using their 8 ways. I don't know.
We actually had that discussion a couple years ago, and I can't remember what meeting it was at. And I honestly can't remember the outcome, but it was either the stakeholders or a safety meeting where we had the discussion that if you go into another district, you need to respect the way they do, how they transport the students and try to mirror it. But if I remember right, it's not in law.
There's nothing in statute.
Yeah, but if you're going into a district and they're doing an 8-way stop, then you should be.
It's a courtesy thing, but and that's one thing we talk about when we do our driver presentations and transportation training stuff. Is that as soon as you start to do those right-handed drops with 4-way flashers, I guarantee you're going to start to confuse the public.
Oh, yeah.
And you better be consistent in where you do it and how you do it, so that you're not switching back and forth, because it's just going to, bump up your stop arm violation.
Ours are on hazard streets.
Yep.
Only. So, because we have all these one-ways in hazard streets. And so if we're going to stop on 28th and Park's one way this way, 28th's one way this way, the kids live between that and Lake. They're not crossing Park, they're not crossing 28th. They're off right there. Boom, we're not stopping any traffic. They just keep going. The kids just get off and go to the right. They never cross the busy roads. So that's the only place we really do it is on hazard streets.
And Park is 3 lanes, 4 lanes?
Well, it depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
So bike lane and then 2 lanes, and then it goes to 3 lanes, and it goes back down to bike lane and 2 lanes. Then it goes back to 3 lanes.
Yeah.
Jim, can't you tase that bee?
You're going to shoot it out of the sky.
Or Steve is sitting here talking and Jim's waving. Any other
I'll give you a
questions?
$5 for this end.
We'll start wrapping up here before.
I actually want to talk about the 4 ways and 8 ways. Okay, I'm sitting back down with Thomas. Ironically, I got a call or an email yesterday from our county engineer, and he was questioning why on 371 North, we're not using our 8 ways. And that's actually a board policy for us, and that was after local state trooper said, hey, 60 miles an hour, 2 lanes there, and you're and
Got one. There's 2 in here, I think.
So we're reporting for that.
So those of you that missed it, just got a B. Killed them. So the state patrol came to us and said, we need to look at this. So we're using our 4 ways. And the engineer's asking, why are you doing this? Because you're confusing people. The same thing on County Road 3 and 77. We've got a lot of turn lanes or bypass lanes. So the same, and uses the general public when one stop you're using.
But if you're consistent with it, you will train
the
everyday motoring public
on
what they need to do. Since you started doing that on 371 North, we don't have a problem.
Yeah.
So on 371 North, you're not using 8 ways.
Correct. We're pulling off to the side.
Off to the side.
With right-handed pickup on both sides.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's worked.
Oh, yes.
It's worked great. Because every once in a while, we'll get a call from somebody saying, hey, your driver didn't use their 8 ways. But once we explain it to them, they're like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
But you have to make sure you don't have if a new person moves in and you're gonna pick them up at their driveway, what if this soft shoulder, and then the bus goes off the road?
And that's a piece that we take a look at, even in the winter with the plowing. If they're not plowing it wide enough, we've had to go to the DOT and you need to blade it a little
It's
bit.
in statute that those right-handed drops, when you're pulling off onto the shoulder, must be okayed by the road authority. Okay, so you can't just pick a spot, say on your county road, and decide you're gonna start pulling your bus over there. You've got to check with the county engineer's office to make sure that they say that the shoulder there is wide enough, safe enough, and is built for everyday bus traffic. Okay. Otherwise, there will be an issue. So you have to check with the road authority also.
And then like on the 371 piece, that we actually had to put that into board policy, that they couldn't use their 8 ways there. which is statute, I believe.
Is that policy or procedure?
It's policy, and I believe, I want to say that's what the statute is that if you're not using your 8 ways, it has to be a board policy.
Yes.
So that's what we did. And like on 18, we don't cross any kids. That's all right side drop off. That's in our board policy as well.
Okay.
It's just confusing. Because
It is.
Yeah.
Special ed the other day, and I turned the corner on or off of Old Shakopee Road in Xerxes, put on the Ambers. I'm waiting for a special needs child. We walked out to the bus. She's about 15 feet away. She's coming. So all the cars stop because they see yellow. And then I put the red on. Then what's going on? Everybody stopped for both now. So a lot of times I got to wave people through, as a courtesy. And as soon as they get out, I put the 4 ways on again. And they still don't move. It's really confusing.
Yeah.
We had another instance too where we have a large apartment complex. And when you come up to it, there's a street here with no intersection. And the intersection, or the driveway comes in here, and the stop would be right here before the entrance. Right. Well, there's no sidewalk there, but there's grass to walk on. But on the other side, there's a sidewalk that comes down to it. We have a lot of parents that were complaining that they didn't want their children dropped there, so they want us to block the intersection and drop on the sidewalk. That's not right.
Private road intersection or
It's a large driveway for this large complex.
So it's private road.
Private road. What's the?
Technically not an intersection. Because,
Okay.
because it's a private roadway.
So you can't walk it?
Yep.
Okay.
We
It'd be just like going to the.
Be just like anybody else's driveway.
Yeah, somebody else's driveway.
Okay.
Learn something.
Just make sure, and along with that, with the 911 addressing stuff, well, there's road signs, street signs at some private driveways. So you have to make sure that what you're actually dealing with is either a public road or a private road.
Okay.
The only way to know that is to get a hold of the county or the state or the township or the city to find out for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I usually say, just say, who paused it?
Pretty much.
Yeah. City paused it, that's the last you get. If a private person paused it, that's.
You know the situation.
How are we doing? Any other questions? All right, well, we will wrap up here so everybody can have a little bit of a break before special ed gets started. Our next meeting is November 19th in Bloomington, 8801 Lindale. That's the garage, right? Yeah, no.
Bet you won't be there. I won't. Yeah.
I'll let
Jim?
Paul go.
You're coming down for that?
Probably not.
Probably. Let Paul take care of that.
Paul take care of it.
Paul and Brian, baby will be here.
Yeah.
We hope.
And if you can send me the agenda and minutes, I can send that out when I send out to the special ed committee. So that way, anybody that's not currently getting your email,
We can also ask each association to send it out too.
Yeah.
Right. That would be nice. Okay. Is there any upcoming topics that you would like us to try to work on for future meetings? I know that the new legislation now, school districts are working through the bullying training process. So we might have somebody come in and talk to about what they're doing to meet the legislature. Is there anything else that you guys would like a guest speaker or anything? If you have an idea, don't hesitate to email me so that we can set something up. Otherwise, we are finished. I appreciate all of you folks that came today. Kayla, the meeting will start at? Quarter 2.
We will start at 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. Thank you all.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Thomas, you gonna sign us off till 11? Okay.
Kayla.
Gotta go home.
change up of the room here. I want to be able to, you guys to be able to see the seats. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Are we okay. Thanks everyone for joining the first special transportation committee meeting for the 2014 school year. We'll start off with introductions. I am Kayla Hinkensefkin from the Brainerd School District. I am the chair for the Special Transportation Committee, so welcome. Help yourself to cookies, and there's coffee back there, there's sodas in the refrigerator there. I do have a couple fly spotters in the room because every once in a while, a bee shows up in the room. So if you need to spot a bee, go ahead. Down the hallway to your right, midway is the men's restroom. Almost to the end of the hallway on the right is the women's restroom. So let's start over here with introductions, your name and where you're from. And then, Amy, are you going to take notes for us?
Yes.
Can you write down any hot topics that people want to talk about? So if you have a hot topic, a topic you want to talk about, Amy will make a note of it, and then towards the end of the meeting, we will talk about any topics that you have if we haven't addressed it during the meeting. All right?
Okay. I'm Deb Charlie, and I am from Redfern School District, ISD 138. I'm the secretary there, and I do all of the special ed.
My name is Randy Johnson. I'm with Hope and Bus sales guy for Northern Minnesota.
I'm Dory Moonen. I'm from Trobex Bus Service out of St. Stephen. We do transportation for Sartell and St. Cloud school districts.
I'm going to be down with, I think, presenting today.
Yes.
Yes.
Don Seeger from MTN Bus Service in Sauk Rapids, primarily training as well as a bus driver.
Michelle Alcox from the Aiken School District. I do the special ed transportation coordinating, amongst many other things.
Okay. Derek,
Thomas Berlin with Hopkins Public Schools.
Derek Gate with Hopkins Public Schools.
Ruth Roberts with Minnetonka School District. I am a special ed liaison between the school and the transportation, also a trainer. And that's it. And I'm sorry, I was at 200, which is rough. So, anyway.
So you got to meet our administrators.
I did. I was.
Like, you don't recognize anything. I'm Amy Stevens. I'm with Intermediate District 287, which is the intermediate in the western suburbs of the metro area. And I'll be taking notes today. So,
Bill Martin with Eden Prairie Schools.
Todd Johnson, Vision in Buffalo.
Nick Kalishas, Cleveland School District, Director of Transportation.
Cleveland, Minnesota, correct?
Correct.
Eric and Christy Fornchell Bus Service and Pillager, owner-operators over there for both special needs and school buses.
And you guys are brand new to special needs transportation. So you gain a wealth of knowledge in this room. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I think the great thing about these committee meetings is that the fact that you get to meet people and you make those contacts when you have those questions.
You should tell them about the special transported students with disability national conference in March in Frisco,
Texas.
Okay.
Awesome conference.
Conference for you guys.
Sure.
Okay. So does anybody have any hot topics that they want to talk about? Any burning question that you have that we want to make sure that we address today? I'm gonna focus on car seats and safety vests today because I've been getting a lot of questions on those this year. So if that's a question, we may answer that during that presentation. But does anybody have anything else that they would like addressed, or a question, or don't be afraid to, no question is a dumb question with this group. This is how we learn.
I actually have in one of our sites, which is like 180 buses that come in there from all different school districts. And we have students from elementary up to high school in this building. And I've been talking with my safety person, and we've just had some unsafe things as far as staff sometimes and students kind of walking in between buses and things. So I think really stressed with them. We need somebody that's in charge of the crosswalk and everything. But does anybody have like a plan exactly, like at your schools, like a plan or a protocol or policies of exactly like what the staff's responsibilities are and things around the school to make sure it's safe and you're busing? Like we have, busing staff. But just sometimes it just doesn't seem like it's clear exactly what their duties are and things.
Is that NAC?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually addressed it with them because they're asking us to do, things that not only are not safe, but they're illegal as far as crosswalks. They have self-appointed staff directing buses there, and they have not educated, obviously, in what's going on. I just had to say, well, I'm not doing it. So, but it is problematic up there.
Yeah, and make sure you call me. You call me. I found out from some drivers and a couple staff about things, and so I've been observing and looking into it right now. So yeah. So
is it just special ed, Amy, or is it special ed?
No, this is all just special ed. The whole building special ed, and the very severe special ed kids, anywhere from high functioning to low functioning autism, EBD, and then we have a big ALC population in that building as well. So that's the thing, a lot of different kinds of kids in there. So,
anybody have any comments, suggestions? I guess mine would be exactly what you're doing: go out and observe, and then get together with the staff at the building and chat with them about what's going on.
But does anyone, do you have like a written, nobody has like a written policy or protocols of like what responsibility it is? Okay. I think I'm trying to work with them and stuff, but I think that's what we need to do is have exact, protocols, so there's no question of what needs to be.
Who's supposed to be doing what.
Right.
Okay.
I think what happens is that it's so vague. There may be a description, but it's so vague that they really don't know exactly what they can do and what they can't do, how far they need to go.
Right.
The only thing that I see with the more that you put in writing, the more that people don't start to think outside of the box then.
Yeah.
That would be my only concern, is that the more that you put in writing, then people feel they're locked in, and that common sense piece goes away. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But I'm pretty new to this, so, I need the resources where I can get all that information down, so I can at least have it for our bus drivers and the assistants on the buses. Because even the job description that I got from one of our school districts was so vague that it doesn't tell them, what to do, exactly what to do. You can, like you said, go outside the box so many times.
Yeah.
Right, but and I understand what you're saying, but that's the thing that I had the safety guy come observe too, and a lot of people don't know who he is, and he even observed more than me because they see me and go, oh, we better do this and that. But anyway, he had said it just seems like a lot of people standing around and just don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And so if they had, kind of a little more clear what their jobs are,
And Eden Prairie, it's building by building, and each of the deans or principals are in charge of student traffic control.
Okay.
And for us, we're fortunate that we've got a lot of open communication between our department and each of the buildings. And again, that openness and that direct communication has let us think outside the box, because we've had a lot of different situations, and each building is different. But as far as I know, no one has anything in writing.
Okay.
But everyone does have a role.
Okay.
And those roles are very clearly defined.
So like, are they in certain, like you're in charge of this crosswalk or this this intersection or corner.
If we identify a crosswalk or something
Yeah.
that we feel from transportation is dangerous, we'll let the building know. And the
And
deans,
make sure
they'll
that
make
they-
sure that
okay.
it's staffed, either by a paid staff person or teachers and whatnot.
Okay.
But, yeah.
But certainly law does jurisdict over crosswalks and the roadways, correct? I mean, you know, as a bus, they're requiring us to park in crosswalks.
Right.
We're backing it. I mean, this is, it's frightening to say the least, and there were several incidents up at the school she was talking about where there were children being hit, almost hit. You know, it was, they came several inches ahead. I know in Minnetonka, sometimes they even hire police force that can actually jurisdict over roadways or whatever to direct you. And I know that's a budget issue, but still.
Well, and that's what I've been working. We have a liaison officer there, and I've been saying he should be out there during that time.
So I heard you talk about blocking a crosswalk, so they're having the bus park across the crosswalk.
Buses, and
Is it on the school district property or is it on public property?
It's on the school district, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I wish Jim was here, I don't know how that works on school district property,
Well,
that's private then.
Well, see, that's the thing, what we were talking, yeah, I wish he was still here. That's what we were talking about is, it's kind of iffy when it comes to, you know, but with the school zone, you know.
And I think private, basically, all the rules go out the window. If it was a public roadway, you can't block that crosswalk, and if it's,
Right. Well, and what we were talking too is, see, this building is only like 2.5 years old, and they made it very, you know, pleasant looking, you know, and so the crosswalk thing is like, it's a darker kind of like a sandstone, and so it's not officially marked crosswalk, but it looks different from the other pavement, and it's really super wide. And so that it really doesn't need to be quite that wide. It's, I think in the staff's mind is, well, they can pull partially in that, but that's confusing the drivers and everything. And so myself, when I was observing, I said, we need to have a painted crosswalk in here. And then our safety guy, who is actually a former chief of police for Mound, he said the same thing. And so our facilities, the head of facilities is like, oh, well, that won't look very nice. And we're like, well, too bad. It needs to be safe. And so people know exactly where that crosswalk is. Yeah.
And that's that same crosswalk that goes from the building to that center median where you've got other parent pickups and taxis.
Yeah, and see, and that's the thing. Yeah, that's
it
where,
is dangerous.
yeah, because kids are crossing there to get their taxis and their vans, so.
Wow.
And there is a person there, but she's kind of, they need more staff too, and I have been communicating that with them, because she's trying to do everything. She's trying to like manage the taxis and the vans and kind of do that crosswalk. And I said, you need somebody there with, and I have flags and everything, with a flag directing and keep making sure you have that flag out to block the buses when people are crossing.
Yep, and we have that over at our high school. We've got high school and then our 9th grade center. And we've got buses on both sides, and the person actually falls under me, but they're the flagger. They got the flag, they've got the safety vest, and they're the one controlling the traffic in there as well. When the kids are walking, traffic stops, then she stops the kids, and then the traffic starts.
Yeah, we have all the safety vests and everything, but when I've been there a few times, some are wearing them and some aren't, and it's like, you need to wear them for your safety and so the bus drivers can see you.
Rushing them through.
Rushing through, so the driver's intimidated by him yelling at, he literally yells at the drivers. And then so you're rushing through because they want you moving forward, and then you're not even thinking, so you're moving forward at the same time people are crossing.
Well, Amy, you're gonna have to keep us posted on that, but it sounds like you're headed in the right direction with it, and.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you guys have any kinds of cones or anything? Because I know we purchased neon yellow cones that say student crossing, stop for pedestrians, and every day the staff from the school comes out, sets them across the crosswalk because it wasn't painted very bright to begin with.
Okay.
And we also have ones that we set along the side of the sidewalk so the vehicles know this is bus loading and unloading.
Okay.
No
and
regular vehicle.
And should not stop there. Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday, and that's a good idea.
And so the staff pulls them up every morning and puts them back out every night after school has resumed. And they do it every day, and it seems to have worked perfectly.
Right.
Any other hot topics? Alright, so when we're looking at our schedule for this year, what would you, as a group, and if anybody that's out there, send your messages to Thomas. What would you like to see as topics for this year? I don't really have anything on the agenda for this year for topics. I'm kind of looking at the group. What would you like to see? What would you like to see us do at our meetings?
One topic would be emergency evacs, special ed.
Mm-hmm.
At least in our district, we don't require that students are unloaded or evacuate because of physical. And so really it's incumbent on the drivers to be trained to go through the practice. And we've got plenty of training, but it's all hypothetical. I'm trying to develop some scenario training, but I'd like to hear what other people are doing and what committee has seen as far as really doing good training for special ed drivers in that regard.
Okay, I know Amy worked with Jennifer this last year at Train the Trainer, and they did evac training. So Amy, maybe that's something that you can help us with, maybe you and Jennifer.
1 month.
Yeah, and I know to actually go through the evac training to do it, I think is huge.
I'm working with our local police department. They're very cooperative and willing, and they want to help us with that. Then we run into some other issues with, and we talked about medical service earlier. Drivers who can drive a bus, but can they really evacuate the students physically? And then we run into that issue of putting drivers in that situation where they're doing scenario training and someone gets hurt. Well, should they have been in that position in the first place to drive? And what kind of, we've got a lot of different tracks surrounding that.
Jennifer could bring one of the buses, and she has all the equipment and stuff we could do.
Yeah.
Do that. But no, actually this year, because I train all of our three drivers, because we're mostly special ed, we have a lot of vans that the staff drives. So I talked more in detail this year because of I was working with Jennifer from Anderson Bus and then Paul Davis from the state. And I talked more about evacuation, you think it's not a big deal in a van, but it's still something you got to think about. And I actually purchased the window seatbelt cutter, the window punch seatbelt cutter. And in my training, I showed a video about how to, punch the window out and get out if your vehicle rolls over in a ditch or in water and things like that. And the staff really paid attention to that and took that really seriously. So I think sometimes, just don't think about it as much with the smaller vehicles, but that can be just as bad, especially when there's times we have 6 kids in it.
We could maybe, the safety committee, that could be part of the safety committee meeting as well, that we could maybe do some table talks at the safety committee meeting, and then at the special ed meeting, we do the hands-on portion of it to kind of bring the two groups together. I always say when you're looking at an emergency, at evacuating a bus, don't only look at the emergency. If there's a fire. Last year we had a fire on a special ed bus down in the metro area. They had 3 wheelchairs, Amy? 2 wheelchairs. And
I think there was four students, 2 in wheelchairs and 2 ambulatory.
And they got the children off of the bus and the wheelchairs off of the bus. But the one thing, when you look at the video, they did an amazing job. But when you looked at the video, they were way too close to that bus. Had that bus been fully engulfed and, there was an explosion, they were way too close.
They were 20 feet in the bus. It was just right away when I thought.
And then when you think about a bus breaking down, and you have a spare bus that comes, is that kind of like an emergency evac? You know, I think you have to have a plan for that. And most of you have heard my story before about the bus that we had break down at one of our schools, and they brought a spare bus. There was a driver, an assistant, and now the mechanic that brought the spare bus. And they got the kids from bus A to bus B. The bus takes off after all the kids are transferred, and they get to the home of the first person, the first child. That child's not on the bus. They know they picked it up from school. It was an elementary at the time. Elementary, nonverbal, autistic child. They went immediately back to the school. There that child was on the sidewalk, rocking back and forth. There happened to be another gen ed that came out of the building, this child, and was waiting with this child because they knew somebody was going to come back for this kiddo. You know, so I always like to say, you need to think about that piece. So here we had 3 people. How did that child end up on the sidewalk? Did that child crawl under the seat? And we're probably never going to know because we didn't have cameras on the buses. Luckily, the parents were very understanding, but it made us think differently about when there's mechanical breakdown. This last winter, we had a bus that slid into the ditch. And I actually had this summer, the bus assistant that was on that bus talked to me about a concern that she had when they moved the kids from one bus to another bus. There's a bee, Derek. Nope, it's coming back to me. So bus goes into the ditch. They bring a spare bus. And I can't tell you where that spare bus was parked, but the concern, and this was on 371, so it's 2 lanes of traffic. The concern is that they took the kiddos out of the back of the bus and put them, special ed kids, put them up on the highway. There was no other adult up there. So, you know, think about that piece. What could have they done differently? And if there was already a spare bus there, there was a spare bus there, where was that mechanic? Could have that mechanic been at the back of the bus lifting the kids, and the supervisor from the bus company inside of the bus, and the bus assistant who knows those kiddos up there? So, you know, I think it's all those things. You're looking for a fly spotter?
No, I'm looking for some tissue. That's right, bring the focus over to me.
Sorry, I see that bee flying around. So I think, you know, what's an emergency to me and what's an emergency to Thomas could be 2 different things. And again, think about if you have that mechanical breakdown. Because I think that we're probably more than likely, you would see more of a mechanical breakdown maybe than you would an incident where you have to evacuate the bus. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right, because we've had that a couple of times, and we have some very disabled students and that are in wheelchairs. Hope it's landed on your head.
Good. Where did our flight? I'm so sorry about the bees.
So is there a protocol that you're supposed to follow with doing the emergency evacuations with special needs, like for practicing? Because up until this year, we've always just had the drivers write up a plan of how they would do it if there was an emergency. However, this year, we've actually started doing the evacuations at the school. We have their parents come out so that there's always another adult per child. But like we have 2 wheelchair students. One is a smaller student, which is easy to pick up and take out even with the chair. But we have another one that's a high school, and there's no way that the driver on there is going to pick that student up with or without the wheelchair. We don't have aides on those 2 of our wheelchair buses. So should we be doing an evacuation, or should we just keep doing it where we're penciling it on paper of what they would do?
And that's a great question. So what we did, we talked about in our district that we'll actually take the buses over to the schools. Staff will come out and we'll do an evacuation so that we can see those types of things. What happens if I have no power? you know, we may not actually emulate that, but it would be a piece that that staff doctors will get in our OTs and PTs and.
Well, I know
different
like our
people.
training shows us though, for like wheelchair kids, if they're not functionable or whatever, then you put emergency and you take them that way. However, sometimes there are injuries that come with dragging them out the back door on that blanket. So we don't really want to do it with a real student because we don't want to cause unnecessary injuries. However, the driver needs to understand what they're getting themselves into with having to move a student that's about the same size as them off of the
Well,
bus.
that's what you,
That's my goal.
right, and that's what you would do in training, like we've done with the training, Jennifer and I. You have a volunteer, which I volunteered one time, and she dragged me out the back by herself, and it's kind of scary, but that's what you do, so you get that experience, because yeah, you can't do that.
So try to get another adult that's similar size to the child and have the driver.
Right, right, yeah. The other thing I was going to say, Osseo is one of our big districts that bring a lot of kids to our locations. And at that NEC that we were talking about last week, they have evacuation. And usually what they just do is kind of talk to the kids about their plan and everything, and they don't have the special ed kids do it. At that site, we only have one student that's in a wheelchair. Otherwise, they're all more mental health disabilities, so they're able-bodied. But anyway, they had the kids that were able to, and the majority of them did that, like the EBD and not just the kids. This time they did evacuate in the back of the buses. And the staff knew and helped and everything. And they did a great job, and it was a great experience, you know, for them. So that's something, if they are able-bodied, I think it is good, but you need to prepare them a little bit more.
And that's the way we had
than
tried to do it
average
this
kid.
year. The reason we decided to do it, because like our autistic kids, our nonverbal kids, I'd much rather see on a mock situation how they're gonna react. You have to take them out the back door or that they never have to use, rather than wait until we have an emergency on the side of the road. And now this one driver has all 8 kids out, well, this one's hyperventilating because that's not the door I'm supposed to go out.
Yeah, so if they've experienced it before, it would be a little bit less frightening.
We have a student on one of our buses that if that bus has a mechanical breakdown, that driver will call the mother to come and get that child, because this particular child, they will not move from here to there. So my question is, now what will you do in the case of an evacuation? And I think you should always look at before, and this is what I told our people this summer, and Cheryl Wolf talks about this all the time. Before you put a special ed kiddo on a bus, you better figure out how you're gonna get them off in case of evacuation, if you have to evacuate. How is that child gonna react? Think about in the schools, and I don't know if anybody's in the schools when, or have been in the school when they do a fire, and you think those kiddos that the noise, that sensory noise is going to set them off. I've seen in the schools where, you know, they're walking the kids out ahead of time, and they're putting the sound muff on, but, you know, you may not have that choice in a school bus. You open up that back door, and if that buzzer is going off, how are they going to act when that fireman shows up? And all things to think about. I think things to go back and talk with your contractor or talk with your district. You know, what do you do? And I had this very conversation with one of our EAs this year. She said, I don't know how we would get this kiddo off the bus, especially if, and the kiddo is in a manual chair, an electric chair. She said, and if we can't get the chair off and now we have to get the kid out, what are we going to do? So, you know, I said, first off, I would go back to the parent and say, if this happens, can we get them out of the chair? What do we need to do?
We've had actually, I think either 2 or 3 situations the last couple of years where my midday buses that bring the kids to work sites and things, they broke down. And the one time it was a really busy intersection. And so we had to call the police to have them block the way. And so then the bus came up and he kind of angled, like at an angle to help protect, you know, so they wouldn't get hit by any cars, you know, if a car didn't see them. Then the police were behind. And they were able to put both the lists down and then just transfer from one to the other. And I heard the staff was just great as far as, you know, they talked about it quick first, what the plan was, and they were really calm with the students because they were 18, 19-year-old students, but they were pretty low functioning. And, but they just kind of went, oh, we have to get on one bus and get on the other, and just didn't make a big deal of it. So they almost thought it was like an adventure. But twice and it was a little scary, but it worked out okay. So you have to make sure you ask for assistance with the police.
And while we're talking about emergency evacuation, something for you guys to think about is when you do have, my example is going to be in that bus that went in the ditch last year. I don't know what your protocol is with your company or with your district, but what we used to do is, you know, the driver would call in and say, there are no injuries. Get the kids from this bus to this bus. We take them to school. We call the parents and tell them, you know, this is what happened. Nobody was hurt. The bus that went into the ditch last year, and bless this bus assistant's soul, she called me after they had the kids transferred to the other bus and said, you know, I'm just not comfortable. The kids were all okay. I'm just not comfortable that we made the medical decision that these kids are okay. I'm going to have the administrator meet when we get to the building. So that's what we did. The administrator met them, the school nurse checked out the kiddos, and we had a kid who had a shoulder injury. So at that point, we changed our protocol. When we have a crash, I call our school nurse and tell her we had a crash. This is the building that the kids are at. There are no visible injuries. We're going to bring the kids to the school, and then we want the administrator and the school nurse to meet the kids and check out the kiddos. And then from there, the building administrator and the school nurse actually make the call to the parents to let them know that there was a crash and, you know, whether if their child is okay, or just to give the parents the information. The other piece that was interesting on that, when we went, when that bus ended up in the ditch and the student was hurt, and we found out that there was a seat in that seat, and the student was not wearing that seatbelt. Well, this was a high school student, not wearing that belt. It now became a situation where I had to file a report with MAPT for maltreatment. Then they had to determine if there was maltreatment or not. So another piece to think about when you're training your drivers, make sure if there's belts on that bus, those kids are belted in and are belted in properly. You know, granted, we want to teach our kids in most cases how to properly do this, but that driver and assistant really need to follow up and check on that. And they all, the driver wasn't at fault at all because in road, but I thought it was really interesting when I had to file that report.
We have the same protocols in place for crashes, but we also have on board every bus slips of paper that notes that are given to each of the students to go home to the parents, indicating that they've been involved in a crash or some incident. So the parents.
So they can get a phone call?
That's in addition to another form of communication. But yeah, the administrators and the nurses always check out the kids and give phone calls. So the bus drivers aren't in the position to make a medical determination. Yeah, yep. That's not their place.
Yep. Anybody else have anything that they do in the event of a crash?
We had a situation a month and a half ago. We had a car go underneath the back of a school bus at the railroad crossing because they didn't see that the bus had stopped. But we always have either the city cops or the sheriff's station, depending on where it's located, come out, and they're the ones that give the okay to release. The school was notified, but we did send letters home to each parent stating that just saying that the children's name may be returned to the other driver's insurance company because they needed to know who was on there in case there were injuries for later. But I don't know, is it the district itself that has a policy, or is there a state policy that says if you have an accident That the spur or the city cop, whoever is liable for releasing them? I mean, do they have to be, they have to give some kind of first aid in order for the child to be released, or do they have to make sure visibly themselves that the child is okay before they release them? Because if there's damage to the vehicle, I know you have to call a patrolman of some sort.
Very great.
For the medical responsibility of the child, if a representative of the school district is there, director or someone else, they take responsibility for that student unless EMT is there to clear them medically. So you could actually overstep a city official. If they say to move the kids and you don't believe it's safe, you can actually say, no, we're not going to do that.
Okay.
And if you believe that the student safety is jeopardized by being in that situation, then you can make a decision to do that. The Good Samaritan law protects you, but when EMT shows up, then they take over responsibility medically.
And I think the other piece is that that should be in your school district crisis plan. Because in our crisis plan, there's a transportation tab on what to do in case of a crash. There's two different ones: crash, no injuries, or visible injuries, and then a crash where there's injuries and students are taken to the hospital. So that's written right in our crisis policy.
Is that something you can email to me what you use? Because we don't have one in play right now. We've been working on with the district office to try to get one, but it would be nice to have like a mock one to be able to look at and say, okay, this is what other districts do, the similar things we should add to our district.
Yep. No, and that's why we're here. Derek sends out an awesome memo to his building administrators when there's a crash. I'm actually using Derek's memo now when we have a crash. So yes, I can send that out. Amy, you can do that in. Okay. Anything else on that?
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Michelle. It's from be ML Cox. I think Kayla's added mine to her.
You're from what?
From Aiken.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm getting a lot of questions this year on bus seats. Oh, actually, I'm going to show you this. We have several kids in our district now that have seizure meds that we may have to administer in the event that they have a seizure. And it's Diastat. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Diastat. Diastat is not an oral medication. It's a rectal medication. So our staff has been trained how to administer, our bus EAs have been trained how to administer that. Our contracted bus drivers have been trained, but they won't administer it. They are there to assist the driver. One of the things is that we want to obviously keep the dignity of the child and the other students on the bus. We don't want what's happening when they're administering that medication. So I had our local church made us quilts. So on our buses, and they gave these to us. Thank you to the churches. So now we have something that we can hold up and screen if in the event that we have to administer that medication. So if you're in that situation and you need blankets to screen, I would suggest going to your local church and see if the church ladies will help you. I was really surprised. They were really excited about it. And then yes, they gave me 3 yesterday. And when I picked them up, they said, well, how many more do you need? So they're going to work on getting more. So I thought that was a really cool thing. Okay, so how many of you guys use safety vests? Okay, so this is a safety vest. This is in the child's IEP. If they are riding in something other than buses equipped with, so if they're in a safety vest, this is probably something that you're going to want to make sure is in the child's IEP. The safety vest, and we have quite a few of these, and I'm actually going to have Bill talk a little bit, put me on the spot here, about the Houdini. Are you still using that Houdini?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so the safety vest is another way of keeping the child secured in their seat. And there's 4 points of contact, 2 at the shoulders and 2 down by the hips. The vest is worn in the wintertime because we live in Minnesota. This vest is going to be worn underneath their jackets. We don't never want to put it over the top of their jackets because we want the webbing as close to their body as possible. Now, we want to make sure their clothes is underneath there. I heard a story from one district that because they didn't want to have to take the clothes off of the child, put the vest on, and then at school the same thing. We're like, no, 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 this goes over their clothes, and over their jacket. So in the back, and there's a couple of different models of this vest out there, but there is in the back, and this one here is expandable. So I think this, there's 3 different, there's an extra small, small, medium, and large. So you would put this on the child, zip it up in the back. And what I have been doing is, if we have a new kiddo, I send a vest over to the school for the child, and I have a bus seat over to the school. I put the cam wrap on, and what they do is they will practice putting this on the kiddo, because we've had cases where the kiddo doesn't put this on, they fight us. So we practice day after day putting this on. Once they're comfortable putting this on, then we set them in the seat, buckle them up. Once they are comfortable with that whole situation, that's when we put them in this school bus. And that we've been really successful doing that. So you get this vest on, you're going to want to adjust the straps on the vest. And I worked with this one this morning. It's a little hard with my model here, but you are going to want to adjust the straps, tighten them up, and then this loose end, you actually need to weave back through, because that will lock it. If you do not do this, the child can easily, okay, sorry, kid. If you do not weave this back through, if you do not weave it back through and lock it, the child can easily enough wiggle this or play with it to get it loosened. So you need to weave it back through to lock it. You're going to do the same thing on the cam wrap. After you figure out where they need to be adjusted at, you're going to weave them back through, and that'll lock it. Okay? When you get the child, put the child in the seat, hook them up. You want to make sure that, I always tell my kiddos, I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to buckle you up now. This bottom one here, these rings need to be right on the side of their hip. If you put them here, there's no protection, so in the event of a crash, you could cause some internal injury. So this O-ring needs to be here on the side, on their hip. You want this clip here on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that over there with the camera. There's a clip here on the bottom. You want that clip as close to the seat bite as possible. Make sense? I probably not more dressed today. All right. Once you have them in here, adjust your straps as needed. One of the things that I see is people tighten this cam wrap up so tight that it just really indents on the seat. You want it tight enough that it's like this one here is not tight enough that it doesn't slide back and forth. Does that make sense? If you get it too tight, what's going to happen is this is going to ride up on the child, and you don't want that in their belly area. You want the straps or the harness to be resting right on their thigh. If it's not on the thigh, it's too high. So remember that saying, if it's not on the thigh, it's too high. Any questions on this?
Okay, so the student that we have that is using that exact scenario right now, I don't know how we could possibly get it any tighter, but he has gotten the bottom hooks undone and has walked up the seat in front of him and flipped over, and when we pull up to the school, he's hanging over the back of the seat. What are they doing wrong? Is it not tight enough that he's able to get out of it?
Bill, so this is called the Houdini. I have never used this, but in Eden Prairie, you guys have.
Yes.
So I'm gonna let Bill explain this.
This is called a Houdini vest because of those types of students who can just get out of everything. This is a rat's nest, and this is typically how you're going to find it.
Do you need help you hold it?
I've got to figure out top and bottom first. The difference between, this is actually called MAPT vest by the same manufacturer, Easy On. The main difference is that we don't use a cam strap like these regular safety vests that are wrapped around the seat. This is built in, and the connections are behind the seat and actually underneath the seat, so the student can't get to it and unbuckle themselves. You have,
Joe, can you take this one off?
that little girl. And if you have to get one of these, it's really important to get this on correctly. When we first started using one of these, we didn't realize how important it was to make sure everything was done properly, because the girl actually did get out of this vest. Hold on here. And this is actually the worst part, is trying to figure out head from tail and getting everything situated before you put it on the student.
And so does this have this is
Built-in crotch strap, which I'm trying to get together right now. This built-in crotch strap is sewn into the vest, and there's a little piece of Velcro here on the crotch strap that you will affix to the inside of the vest prior to putting it onto the student.
Does the student come out with the vest on every day from home from school? Or
Yes, once a parent is trained, it should be. But all of our drivers and paras are taught how to do this, because often it doesn't come out, the student doesn't come out with it on properly.
And the same with this one here. The student comes out with it on, and this one here, the crotch strap actually is detachable. Once you get to the large vest, there is no crotch strap.
Yep, so like that. And the student would step into this vest and take this from the top, arms through. Just one place here. Okay, let's come around here. And it is easy to drape that across the back. And again, this is adjustable. You've got 3 different places. Once that's zipped in there, you loosen the Velcro from the back and tighten up the crotch strap up front, okay? And then this goes across the back of the seat, and these go down through the seat bite.
In order to use that, do you almost have to have a child that is compliant though? Because the student that we're inquiring about for it is very violent, and everybody that comes in contact is getting injured.
That's a difficulty you have even with the regular safety vests. there's got to be some compliance before you can even use that. There are students that I'd like to use that safety vest, but it'd be too dangerous for the staff to even try to put that on.
Well, see, we've contacted Jim about the student, Centerfeld, and we have been told by him that we just need to deem this child untransportable. Or we're told by the school and everybody else that because he's a special needs child, by state law, we are required to haul him.
Yeah.
So how do you juggle the two? We've got state patrol for safety issues telling us he's untransportable, and we've got special needs staff telling us it's a law, you have no choice. And we've got every employee in the process getting abused and mangled and bitten, pinched, smacked, kicked.
It was actually that we're dealing with the same situation. We go to District 287. We've gone so far as he spits, he hits, all sorts of things. We have a screen put up that is temporary, held up by magnets to keep the spitting down. He's put all the way in the back, installed extra seats so it's far away from any other student. He can spit from the back and hit the driver's head. I think he practiced over the summer. But, our next step is to put another para on board. If not, we might have to transport him by himself. But, yeah.
And there's always the, I would say, getting together with that team, including the parents. And if you have bus video, I think pulling that hard drive and viewing that video with the special ed team, not in our district, our policy is that parents can't view that video, but we bring the team together and we'll take a look at what's going on, what can we do differently. We've had a couple of cases where we've had to have, we've contracted with the parents and the parents have transported them. There is Osseo School District, I believe it is, has had a van specially.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
Yeah. So I was going to tell her if your company cannot transport that student, Jim is correct. You can't say that you are not equipped to be able to transport the student. The district still has a responsibility to finding transportation for that student. So they may have to contract with someone else that has more specialized equipment to be able to do it.
But your district owns bus.
Well, and there are some companies in the metro area,
But even as a district owned, you could say that and contract it out to someone else.
Because we've offered even to the parents, we've had numerous meetings, we've even offered the parents, we will pay you mileage. And they're not willing because it's a split household, so one parent has them this week or these 2 days and the other parent has, but the mom is willing to transport two, dad and girlfriend are not, nobody can transport home.
And is there a para on that bus?
And the para we've had them quitting left and right. We've got the one that we have on there now has only agreed to go through today because they have off school tomorrow and Friday. And she said after that, I'm done.
See, there's been a couple of our because we get really tough students, and a couple of our students at like Eden Prairie and Hopkins in different areas and Osseo. And there's now a couple contractors in the metro area. I don't know if there's any around here, but they've converted a minivan into the back seats, almost like a squad car.
Yeah, and that was what
Jim
was telling us is you may have to get, but we're in the road to get a vehicle that's like a squad car and got caged in without having to specially make something.
And that's
what they are specially made, and they're not actually. It's not a cage. It's all plexiglass, and it actually looks It looks really nice.
Bad, right?
Yeah,
it's really nice.
You can't even like the ones from a couple of companies now in the Twin Cities area. From the outside, you can't even tell it's special. It's a special vehicle.
Okay.
Do you have any idea who makes those? Do you know who the contractors are that are making those vans, or?
Twin Cities Transportation has, I believe, 3 of them now. I don't know. And I'm not sure do you know who they went through? Do you know?
I don't.
Yeah. I weighed the cost of making one as opposed to contracting one. I mean, it's cheaper to contract because unless you're going to have that student for 12 years.
For you guys in the metro area, that works, but in the rural area, it doesn't.
Right. So here's the if a school district contractors, they, have one of these customized, you can definitely share it with other school districts, because that's originally I contacted Osseo and said, hey, we need to use your vehicle. And they would have let us use it if they hadn't sold it. So you can certainly pull your resources together and share. That even as a contractor, say, okay, we have that specialized vehicle, and yes, we'll use it for.
Well, the other thing we talk about is, it is a special needs student, so there should be funding resources somehow to help you get that vehicle, either through the federal government or the state. And even if you do your own general fund, you're going to get reimbursed because you're going to classify it as special needs equipment. So the school board and the directors need to make that decision about how you're going to transport the student the best way. And then you could get creative of if you're not going to have the student for 12 years, if they're in 8th or 9th grade or whatever the case may be, you could take a used, pick up a used van versus a brand new one and have it converted. Something like that. I don't know if you folks have co-ops.
Yeah, we have a special ed co-op. They're in the co-op with us.
So it could be something where the co-op talks, because each superintendent is part of the co-op, but maybe the co-op could have the vehicle, so the vehicle could travel from district to district, whoever needs it from year to year kind of thing.
Okay.
So, just start thinking outside the box of how to help make this work, but always fall back on the fact that this is a special needs circumstance and there is funding out there to do it. They just have to, understand that. Some special needs directors and school districts and say, well, all of our money's been appropriated. Well, you have a student that has a need, and there are ways that you, especially for special needs students, can get this done. Make a couple phone calls, talk about how you're going to do it, but you have to take care of the student, and obviously normal processes are not working, so you have to come up with something.
And make sure you document everything, that this is the last resort. It's either, homeschooling the kid or doing this. And it's been very successful for a lot of kids that they didn't know if they'd be able to transport them, so.
Yeah, and again, bring that whole team together to work on it. And if you have video, pull that video, have the team look at what can we do. We've got one student that we pick up by himself, and there's 3 staff people that ride with the student. So, thinking outside of the box.
As far as the manufacturing goes or the retrofitting goes, I believe, and I don't know the company's names, we can ask them, but the same companies that set up police cars for the local departments, because it's basically using that kind of equipment and putting it in a van, plexiglass and restraints and things like that. And I don't know the company.
Actually, no, now that you said that, Osseo uses this company that's right, I live in Grove, that's right by my house.
Yeah.
Can't think of the name of it, but they do that, they outfit police cars and they have them do it.
Yeah. So.
Okay, that helps? Okay, all right. So moving on, our next seat is Star seat. Now the safety vest from Easy On does not have a expiration on it. The Bessie one does, they're 5 years, so you have to know which vest you're using. And if you're not sure about, if you can't remember, was it 5 year, this one doesn't have it, if you call the manufacturer or go online, you'll find that information. Star Seat, they have an expiration as well, and on the Star Seat, you'll find a little tag. Yes, okay, so on the tag, right here, it tells me that this was manufactured, and this seat is expired. As you can see, I haven't thrown it away, I'm using it for training purposes. So I keep these seats for training purposes. You can see that bag that I have over here. When I go out to a school, talk with a family, this is why I carry this bag with me. A along with my vest and then my training seat so I can show them, this is what the seat's gonna look like that your kiddo's in. There's a new seat out there like the Star seat that does not have an expiration date. Does anybody know why seats have expiration dates on them? It's because of the plastic. So, well, that's part of it. The plastic on the Star seats or on a car seat or a booster seat, that from the heat and the cold, it weakens it. So that's why most seats are for 5 to 10 years that you can't use them. Again, you can check with every manufacturer to see what is their recommendation on replacement of the seats. But so these Star seats we have in a bus, and they're sitting outside at night, and it's cold out. And then you think about it in the summertime, they're in that bus and it's hot out, so that plastic breaks down. That's why there's an expiration. This seat does not have an expiration, and that's because there is no plastic frame on it. So it's just like the Star seat, except it does not have the expiration on it. This is a sample that I got from one of the bus vendors. So I thought this was interesting. The other thing is that I like about this seat is that it folds up nice and compact. It doesn't here unless you have one of these. Makes it a little bit harder. So you've got different options.
Is that called the Star seat as well?
No, this one here is it's a CE white. The price on it is about the same, and it's all in what you want. Now, when you're looking at whether it's a safety vest, one of these, or one of these, a couple things that you need to follow. You need to make sure that the seat you're putting the child in is the correct seat for the child. We look at the child's height and weight. So on any seat that there is out there, there should be a label on the side that's going to tell you, so this one here, for example, can be used only for children who weigh 25 to 65 pounds. And a child whose height is 47 inches or less. So when you're looking at those seats, you need to make sure you've got the right seat for that child because they've been crash tested up to that weight. That make sense?
What is the largest height and weight for the vests?
The vest is, they're looking at chest, and the weight goes up to 160. You can have the safety vest special made. But if you have them special made, there is a waiver that the parents have to sign because a special made vest has not been crash tested.
Vests are custom ordered.
Okay.
And they're crash tested.
And those are crash tested, okay. But I know the regular safety vest, if you need something bigger than a large, they could special make it for you, but I know there's a waiver that you have to sign. Okay? Any questions on these seats here? Right.
Yeah, this seat right here that you're just talking about, does that accommodate for higher bench seats? And because I see the seat, yeah, because we've got some seats that are higher than others.
Take a look here. So a seat like this one here.
Yep.
Okay. That's a great question. I haven't even tried this to see if it will work.
It actually looks like it's set up for the higher bench seat, right? Versus if you had an older bus, it would be too high. That would be better if you tried it on the front.
There it is. Strap there. Oops. So, a two-people job. Let me see if it says here on the side. That's a great question. Okay, this one's for children who are 20 to 90 pounds. I don't know, I'll play with this one later. Okay. This is a brand new seat, so I would assume that it does.
If those star seats are used on a school bus format, it's behind them, then it has to be kept.
Great question. So the question is, and you can come up here and play with that too, John, if you want. So the question is, on the star seat, if you have a child in a star seat, the seat behind has to be left empty. So my question back to you is, are there seatbelts in the bus?
We don't use any. I'm
Okay.
asking for future.
Okay.
reference,
So
we don't have any seatbelts on the
okay.
buses right now.
So yes, if this is in a seat, if this seat is mounted in this seat, or installed in this seat, and this is the seat behind it, if there are no seat belts in this seat, you cannot use the seat behind. Because what happens is when you put this cam wrap around the seat, it changes how compartmentalization works. So the children that are in the seat behind, as well as the child next to them, need to be restrained. And that can be as simple as a lap belt. So if there are no lap belts, you shouldn't have anybody here or behind them.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the student from the seat behind being able to reach up and loosen.
It all has to do with the compartmentalization and how the cam wrap going around this seat changes how this seat is going to perform in a crash.
The other thing that we're not doing at Eden Prairie, seats like that design with the wide back, we're not putting add-ons, cam straps or anything like that on those because they've got a plastic core in the middle. And if someone takes them down too much, it can crush and the integrity of that seat for compartmentalization is gone. We've had to replace several bus seats because of that.
Great, thanks for that. Some information.
A seat that's designed like the one that you've got right in front of you, where it's already built in and you're not utilizing a strap.
Okay.
A student, you can put it on. You do not need seatbelts behind them, correct?
Okay, so it's got a built-in.
It's got the seat, it's got the child restraint.
If it has the
If
built-in.
that's what you're utilizing, not the stars.
Yeah, like this one here?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So if it has this built-in,
Yeah.
then, and that's how the bus came from the manufacturer, then you're okay.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because again, this, you
Design.
look at the built-in, yeah, it's the design. We're not changing how this seat is going to perform in a crash.
I just wanted to make sure
Yep.
I heard that.
Yep, nope. So it's just, we're looking at this, when we're wrapping something around this seat, we've now changed compartmentalization in that. Make sense? Any other questions on that? We have a lot of these seats. I actually just recently told our contractor that as they purchase buses, I'd like to see them get seats like this. And that's because I think it makes that bus or that seat more versatile. You know, you can flip it up if you need to put another child in there. You don't have to worry about, these don't have an expiration on them. These you look at just like your seatbelts in your car. They don't have an expiration. So I think this type of seat with the built-in, I like them. Everybody's preference is a little bit different, but I think, you know, that piece of it makes it very versatile. And I think when you're looking at purchasing a special ed bus, especially if you're fortunate enough to purchase a brand new one, those are the things to look at. How are you going to use this bus? And I think it's so important, if you have the opportunity, is to talk to the drivers who are actually driving the vehicle. What are they seeing out there? What would help them? Now, you know, we contract. I can only speak for what my bus assistants say. Go to that driver. What are they? I'm hearing the drivers love these. these, if they have a field trip, they gotta take them in and out. Now, where am I gonna store them at? So, does that make sense? All right. So then, does anybody have lap shoulder belts on their buses? Ooh, we do have some, okay. Shoulder belts, just like in our personal vehicles, we need to make sure that we are correctly using these. I wish I had a seat here. My seat with the lap belt only is over at one of our schools, but you want to make sure, again, that the bottom harness is on the thigh. If it's not on the thigh, it's too high. You think about that. If it's up too high, let's say it's at their belly button, and in the event of a crash, their body's going to move forward. The only thing to stop this belt here is going to be the spine, and that's where you're going to have injuries. We want that low, and we want it on the thigh because we've got our hip bones here that are going to help. Here at the top, you want to make sure that the slider piece is down at the shoulder. Hey, Dan. And you want to make sure that the harness is coming right across their collarbone. Again, if it's rubbing against their neck or not wearing it at all, in the event of a crash, you could have internal injuries. Now, on a seat like this, would we use a booster seat? No, we would not. Because all the booster seat does is it helps for the positioning of the belt. So when you think about how many people have vans and Suburbans that they use, okay? So in your vans and Suburbans, we would use something like this because more than likely it doesn't have this adjuster here. So what's going to happen, I'm going to pretend now that we're going to pretend this is a van. So then we would use this. It doesn't have this adjuster strap on it. This one's probably going to be, we're going to pretend. Whoops. That's not good. So we're going to pretend this is a little short person. And we bring the strap around and we're going to hook them in. That strap is going right by their face. So what this adjuster does is it brings it down, okay? But in our personal vehicles, we don't have that adjuster in our vans and Suburbans. The other thing is that when you're using in your vans and Suburbans, if you are using something like this, you make sure that there is a headrest behind that kiddo. If there is not, and many of my district vans don't have the headrest, then I have to go to a seat like this. This will, of course, if the kiddo is here, this is going to protect their head in the event of a crash. The other thing in your vans, Suburbans, personal vehicles. Do you know what headrest is meant for? Not for comfort.
Restrain your
It's
head.
meant to protect you in the event of a crash. Your head going back. So even in your personal vehicles, you should be adjusting those headrests so that they're there to protect you in the event that you're rear-ended.
I assume it's okay to use a high back even though there is a high rest.
You certainly can. You certainly can. When I go to purchase any of my seats, I really do. I like to get the ones. This one doesn't have one. It's broke. I try to get the ones that this back piece will come off, or you can adjust it up and down. I really, really like those. The other ones are great because they don't take up a lot of room. But then I run into the situation where I go to put them in the van and there's no headrest. So this makes it a little bit, this one doesn't have it, but this can either go up or down or come completely off and then it would look like this. Okay. Again, these have expirations on them. They're all a little bit different, so you want to look in your manual that you get, what is the expiration on them. And then, this one doesn't have it. A lot of times what I'll try to do is put right on it what the expiration is. The other thing that I will do is, you'll see here, that's not a good picture, but I will take pictures of them and I will attach it onto the seat along with the information piece. And then when the drivers check them out, we take this piece off and then we'll put the driver's name on it so we know where that seat went to. Just kind of a way of keeping track of my inventory. I do the same thing with the safety vest. Who got that safety vest? You need to clean these seats. You need to follow the manufacturer's instructions on how to clean the seats. Every manufacturer is a little bit different, but headlights, that's probably the biggest one that we see. And what I have followed from our school nurses is we have to vacuum the seat. So that's what we end up doing if we have headlights. Okay, and again, these seats, these booster seats, unless you're using a Type 3, you're not going to use them, in your buses. You want to make sure you're checking that height and weight, that you've got the right seat for the child. All right?
On the booster seat, when you're starting your route and you have 5 kids in these boosters in a van or 4, whatever,
yep.
Are you securing the boosters somewhere like in the back of the van before you pick those kids up?
Great question. Yes. So thanks for bringing that up. So in your van, you don't have you're starting out your route in the morning, no kiddos. These should be belted in.
Or in the back of our van, you have actual like elastic
netting.
Sure.
Yep.
Put them in the back and then stretch that netting over it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just run the seatbelt over them?
You can just buckle them in. That's when my grandkids were using these, or even this one here. I just buckled them in. That way I didn't have to move them back and forth. But yeah, if you put them in the back of the vehicle, secure them. We've got bungees in our vehicles to secure them too. And sometimes it's not that going to and from to get the kiddo. It's maybe I'm done dropping off the kiddos, and now I got to pick up some other kiddos for a field trip. So that's what we do. All right, great questions. On a star seat, something that I forgot to bring up, can a star seat be used in a van or Suburban? No, it cannot. They are designed for school buses. I know the State Patrol has talked about that they have seen, and I think it's getting better, but they have seen star seats being used in vans and Suburbans. They cannot be used in vans and Suburbans. Okay. I know I'm kind of jumping all over here. The safety vest, if you have a van or Suburban, you can special order or I shouldn't say special order, you can get these for vans and Suburbans. But there's some special things, securements that you do need to install. I don't know of anybody that's currently using them in vans and Suburbans. If I'm using a safety vest, I use it.
We have, I get the name, I can't know the name of the company I have in the records, but yeah, I had to order a special cam strap that would work in a regular van, so you can use those. Or actually they sell, isn't it through Bessie?
I think both Bessie and Easy On.
Yeah, they sell actually ones that come with the cam strap too, so you can buy the safety vest.
And it's actually marked on the tag that this is for, I think the one says it's for a bus and the other one says that it's for vans, cars, or Suburbans.
I think, wasn't it like $70 for the whole thing? I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think for the vest and the cam strap it was $70.
So there is another product out there, and I'm not again aware of anybody that's using them, but it is, it's like this vest. I thought I had one up here with me. It's like the vest, but it's more of it's to keep a person upright, so you still use flat shoulder belt, but it's maybe somebody, if you're transporting in a van or suburban, and they don't have strength and mobility to sit upright, so there is a special vest that you can get for that. If anybody ever has any questions, all you need to do is give me a call and I'll help you the best I can. You know, Amy's gone through the 32-hour Amy and the 8-hour car seat training. The 32-hour is, we offered it a couple of times at Train the Trainer. The 32-hour, or the 8-hour, I'm sorry. The 32 hours cars and personal vehicles. The 8-hour is the school bus. And we've gone through both that. There's also a training coming up in Duluth, and I think I sent out that link for if you're transporting kids with special needs. I went through that training, and it was really good, I think. So I'm gonna, Dan, didn't you go through a car seat training for kids with special needs over in your area?
Yeah, I did. It was some time ago, but yes, I did.
It was, you thought it was pretty good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was really good training. I think more training that you can get on it, but if you can't get those trainings and have a question, there's resources out there within both organizations that can help.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, my kids are grown up now. Wish I would have known, you know, I think parents should all go through a class like that when they have their babies. Because yeah, I think a lot of people put them wrong and didn't even realize it.
I think the misuse on car seats, I mean, at some of our clinics and personal vehicles, we've seen up to 100% misuse. And I mean, if you look at a manual, it's kind of overwhelming. So parents, most parents, they don't intend to do it wrong, just like your bus drivers. They don't intend to do it wrong, but unless you've been on training and you have that knowledge, you know, that's how you're going to figure out how to do it correct. Derek, did you have a question?
You know, I have a grandbaby, so I have to figure out how to install a seat, and they're not as, like you say, the instructions on those seats are not as clear as you would expect them to be. And if it wasn't for the training that I had at a national conference, I think I would have installed it properly.
Yeah, and one of the things that I do when this seat, for example, this is what they call a convertible seat. We can have it forward facing, or we can have it rear facing by making some adjustments. So when I bought this seat here, that we needed to transport in a school bus, we took the school bus to Walmart and we went in to see which seat would fit in that bus. You think the star seat, that's designed for a school bus. Safety vest, that's designed for a school bus. The built-in, it's designed for a school bus. This is designed for a personal vehicle, not for a school bus. But you may, and I think people are seeing more and more that we're having to use these in our school buses, whether it's transporting an infant or transporting a student that has other mobility issues. So if you have to go get a seat like this to use in your school bus, I highly recommend going to whatever store you use, take the bus there, talk to the manager, say, I need to purchase a seat, but I need to bring the seats out and see which one's going to fit.
We used to use the star seats in our big regular school buses because some of us have kids with ants in their pants or always crawling on the floor, whatever the case may be. And we were told, I think it started this year, and I don't know if it's a district policy or if it's a new law that came out, but we are no longer allowed to use the star seats in anything but our special needs buses now.
And if you're using this, if I had to guess, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but if I had to guess, if you're putting a student in that on a regular bus and they're not special ed, or it's not written into your IEP, you cannot do that. So because now what you're basically doing is you're restraining a child. So you need to be in a regular bus. And correct me, does anybody have any other comments on? So yeah, and I know I was guilty of it when I drove school bus, and I had a little dude that he was all over the place. they actually installed a seatbelt for me. Well, now I look back, it's like, I couldn't do that, but again, it's that knowledge piece of it.
I'm Kayla, can I say something?
Yep.
We have teen mom programs in my district, and so we have a lot of little ones that are riding on buses, and like you said, it's all different districts. And it used to be, and it still happens, but the moms would bring their own seats, and they still do it, but I'm finding that the districts in the metro area are choosing to purchase those seats because the teen moms are putting those seats in, every day on the bus, and you don't know if they're putting them in properly or not. And then when they're taken in and out all the time. So a lot of districts now are purchasing themselves and putting them in properly to ensure that they're in good.
And thanks for bringing that up, Amy, because I think another important piece is as a district, if that mom brings that seat, I don't know, has that seat expired? Right. Has that seat ever been in a crash? Is it being installed correctly? Is it the right seat for the child? So that's another reason why, yes, we go out and we purchase our own seats. I had mentioned a crash. In the event of a crash, you need to check with the manufacturer what their recommendation is. Do you need to replace that seat? Do you need to replace the seat? Do you need to replace this seat? I know there's some NHTSA guidelines, and there's one bus vendor out there, and I apologize, I don't know who it is. They were telling me they actually have a template. Are you familiar with that? A template that you can put in the bus to see if the seat has been compromised?
That's our product.
That's your product. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, basically the way that it works is since 2010, all of my seat bikes come seatbelt ready. If you want to add that back, you can actually do it yourself. In the event of a crash, however, you typically have to have myself or somebody from our location come out. We have a template that we lay on the seat, and that will tell us whether or not the back itself has been compromised. If it doesn't fit within those specifications, it needs to be replaced. Typically, that's any crash over 15 miles per hour.
So most
So a little bump, a little bump, you're pretty much, every time you should call us.
Yep. So I thought that was very interesting when I heard that, and I thought, why wouldn't we be checking that? How does that compartmentalization change? If I look at this and it's a little bit forward,
Well, there's even pieces inside of the frame that help with the compartmentalization that can be altered. So we typically have to take the back off.
Okay. So I thought that was interesting.
Question, going back to the convertible car seats in a school bus.
Yep.
What are you using to attach the actual car seat to the school bus frame?
So on this seat here, and I don't know what your seats look like.
We're all icy junk.
Actually, I can hold that.
Good thought to hold.
No, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I failed to bring my book out, but here we have. She brought her book with. I'm going to pass this around.
Yeah,
She said
that's
it was
great.
okay. This is actually the book from the 8-hour course on car seats and safety vests and everything in school buses. And there's a section on emergency bags too. So yeah, pass this around just so you guys can see what that class is like. Okay, so back to your question. Have you guys ever seen, can you see these metal things in there? Okay, do you guys know what those are for?
So you can use the actual straps that
The
come.
the first time I seen those in my husband's truck, I thought that there was a defect in his truck until I educated myself. So, okay. There we go. So what you would do is if you have that bottom latch, you can latch it with that. If you do not, if you only have a seatbelt, what you would do is on a convertible seat like this, the seatbelt goes through the front of the seat closest to the seat back. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So that's what here has to be adjusted this way. Are you talking rear facing or forward?
Either, just a general
Okay.
idea of if we ever had to put a car seat.
Okay, so this one here, rear facing, I would have it at the angle it needs to be, and if I can't use these, then this, and I would look at the instructions here on the side, it tells me where to put that seatbelt through. This particular one, and I like the convertible seat, they give you a little more visible. So by the forward facing, the same thing. I look on the side, it tells me this is going to go right through there. And you would use the lockup on it. One of the things when you are buying if you're buying new seats, or if you have to go back and retrofit a seat, and again, I wish I had one with lap belts only, that male or the female end of the seat, you want to get that as short as you can, so it's right at that seat bite. Many times I see them where they're really long, and what happens is you can't get a good fit because that female end ends up coming up behind the kid's back. Does that make sense? If you got a question when you're looking at buying a seat, whether it's a bus or one of these, call Amy, call myself. Does that answer your questions? Okay, anything else? I want to be respectful of your time. We're getting close.
I want to go back to the seatbelts on the big buses.
Okay.
What about special ed kids who are riding the big buses? Our IEP teams might be doing something wrong here, where they've got special accommodations that include seatbelt. Is that not okay?
In a regular bus?
In a regular bus.
I don't believe you couldn't, but if you're retrofitting a bus, you need to check with, because in your regular buses, you don't have shoulders, do you?
Right.
Okay, so if you're retrofitting a bus, you need to check with that seat and bus manufacturer.
To make sure that that seat can accommodate? Correct.
Yep. Dan?
What we've tried to do on that issue is make sure that our IEP teams are really defining why they want a certain type of restraint so that we can select the restraint on our end instead of telling us what restraint to use. They define what they want the restraint for, and then we can find one to accommodate that need rather than them saying, we want you to use this type of harness. And then that type of harness won't fit on a bus or won't fit in the van or whatever we're using. So we ask them to define why they want that restraint system. Is it to position? Is it to restrain because they're going to wonder about the bus? Is it because they're violent? Is it because they're scared? Define what they want or why they want it, and then we can determine what best piece of equipment to use.
Right, we do that, at least restrictive for us than the seatbelt. Yeah, I just.
And I'm not sure for every fashion how the seats are coming in a full size bus if they all come with the reinforced seat already. Because you can't just go to a like this regular bus seat and put seat belts in it. You can't wrap it around. You can't drill the holes. It has to come with a reinforced.
It has to be a seatbelt ready.
Seatbelt ready seat, right.
To start with.
Are you putting an aid on those regular school buses with that special needs student, or are you leaving that up to the bus driver, the gen ed bus driver, to get him into the seatbelt, or how are you sending an aid with them?
Generally, these students are, maybe, can you restate that question?
Well, so you have a special ed student riding a normal school bus, like you said, and you said you have a restraint system for him or her on that gen ed school bus, correct?
And it's really, we've gone as far as seatbelts.
Okay.
If they need anything more than that,
sure,
they're probably not going to be on the agenda.
And are you leading it up to that kid trash can Okay. I say, you know, at a normal bus stop, is that safe for a driver to be, you know, making sure, looking behind them or making sure that they're getting that strapped in?
Because they can't get out of the seatbelt himself.
Right.
We use a combination of, it all depends on the student. Generally, the student is able to run, it's just a matter of, you know, a little bit antsy. We'll just, generally we have them kitty corner to the driver, so the driver can make sure and it's tightened up properly, or there's a buddy that's with the student. We have used buckle locks also, if that's a problem.
What are you using?
We're not allowed to use those anymore.
Those are an aftermarket product. You should not use it. I've not been crash tested with that.
I did not set you up.
So, okay, good information.
Okay, so we're already over in time, so apologize. I was actually worried that we're going to do that. We're going to do that. Built-in seat. You want to make sure that that this again is nice and snug on the child. You can see this one here. It's too loose. If you can pinch a good portion of that vest, that's too loose for them. We need to tighten it up. When we're looking at this seat, the star seat would be the same. Seat like this would be the same. When we're looking at this clip right here, we always want to make sure that that's on the bony part of the chest. If that's too low, in the event of a crash, the only thing that's going to stop that child when they come forward, that's oops, is the spine again. We could have internal injury. So the same on here, whether you have a rear facing or forward facing, you want to make sure that this is up on their bony part of their chest. So we always say right at that armpit level. And you want to make sure that these are nice and snug on them. One of the things that you'll hear parents say or staff say, oh, it's too tight, it's pinching them. When we think about this little baby, and before they were born, they were all curled up, and then they get in that rear-facing seat. Every time we change, so if we go from the rear-facing, forward-facing, and from the forward-facing, we maybe go to a booster seat. Each time we're making them it's less and less restricted for them. And when they're rear-facing, they don't know any better. They don't know any different, I should say. So the National Pediatrics recommendation is that kiddos in our own person, vans and suburbans, we keep them rear facing until the age of 2 if possible, because they're not going to know any different until we turn them around. Something that I have for everybody is
we can show that video sometime if the kid's too young and what happens in an accident. It's real. That's where when I went through that training, I was like, oh my gosh, people saw that they would never put a kid front facing sooner than they should be.
So, and that's a piece if everybody would like that we could do in November. I'm going to be gone on vacation, so I mean, Amy could certainly do it in November, but otherwise, we could certainly down the line do another session on this if people would like. But I'm going to pass these around. Buckle up, kids. I ordered these. And this is a great resource for you when you're looking at your vans and Suburbans. It'll help guide you through what seat you need to use when. School bus is obviously different, but in our vans and Suburbans, it talks about the rear facing all the way up to the lap shoulder belt and proper usage. It'll talk about where these harness straps need to be at. Forward facing, they need to be at or above their shoulders. Rear facing, at or below their shoulders. So every seat, like Eric said, there's a lot to look at when you're looking at a seat, and reading through that manual can be very, very overwhelming for people. What happens if you are driving down the road and you see seats at a garage sale? Can you pick them up because they're cheaper?
Probably not a good idea.
Not a good idea, because, you don't know, has that seat been in a crash? How old is that seat? Were there any recalls on that seat? So you always want to make sure that you are buying your seats brand new. Come up with some kind of an inventory process so you can figure out, how you're going to turn the seats when they expire. If there's recalls, how are you going to go about checking if there was a recall on the seat? Make sense?
Do crashes affect car seats or harnesses? Those need to be.
Yeah, so I think there's some criteria there too. I want to say the speed's a little bit higher on that one, and it depends if there were injuries in the vehicle. Depends if there was a child in the seat. So there's some recommendations from the manufacturer. Every manufacturer is a little bit different. I think NHTSA's got some recommendations out there. I thought theirs was like 30 miles an hour. Okay, great questions. Anybody have anything else? Okay, we're a little over time. I apologize, but thank you very much. Next month's meeting in November is in Bloomington, and they're working on a topic for us. Please keep in mind, from those of you that joined us from Briar Lakes area, we have that if you cannot drive to where the meetings are at, I always send out the information that you can join us by live feed. That's what Thomas is doing here today, videoing it, and people were sitting at their desks. I actually done that a couple of times when I couldn't make the meeting, and it was kind of cool to be able to see. And I should have asked, did we have any questions from out there? Okay. So if you can't join us, you can join us live feed. And then if you do have questions, you can email Thomas, and the instructions are on there, correct, Thomas?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much. If you did not sign in, there's a sign-in sheet there. If you're not on my email list, put your email on there, because I will send out minutes to you. And if you ever have handouts, I'll send the handouts. So I'll put these right here. If you want to grab one of these, buckle up, kids. And thank you for joining us. Thank you. Did you figure it out?
No, I even looked at the website too.